All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Holt Public School Board meeting of January 25th. I'll call the meeting to order, noting that we do have a quorum with all board members present. And moving to the second item of the agenda, I don't believe we have any additions or changes to the agenda. If not, we'll move to return to learn plan update and discussion. I believe Dr. Hornak, you'll lead us off with this.
I will. Thank you so much, President Perry. Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to give some opening comments before I hand it over to our curriculum team. Prior to hearing more about our return to in-person instruction plan and an update on our staffing and our vaccines, I would like to share some opening comments. I'd like to thank each of you for your ongoing leadership and service to our learning community. As you know, January is Board Appreciation Month, and you are appreciated. As a board, each month you've had the opportunity to communicate with us, and you are a conduit to the community. You advocate at the local, state, and national levels for public education, and you take advantage of opportunities to communicate the needs of the district to our learning community, as well as to central office and our administration. In addition to being board members, board members and our administrators are all parents. Collectively, we have currently 17 students enrolled in our schools who are learning in a remote format. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of our central office team. You know, since last March, we've been working with a variety of stakeholders to develop the Holt Return to School plan. We needed one in July and August. We needed one in September and October, on and on and on. As you know, the plan has been modified several times, and you are required as a board to reconfirm that each time. While we won't be reconfirming our plan tonight, we do want to share some additional details. Our faculty and staff were asked to transition in March to an online delivery. Once determined that we'd be starting the year in a remote format, the month of August was devoted to professional development and how to improve our remote instruction. This work has not been easy. Our educators have spent years practicing and learning about in-person pedagogy. While our current delivery is not ideal, our faculty and staff deserve credit for doing what it takes to transition to our current format. We acknowledge that we are best when we are in front of and alongside of our students. To that end, as a parent of a Holt Public student, I appreciate the consistent mode of instruction. We worry about the well-being of our students. Our focus since fall has been to focus on the well-being of our students and staff. The opening of the peak of the week has been focused on providing mental health supports and resources. We continue to worry about the adults in our system as well, and we have established an employee assistance plan, which allows our staff to access any type of resource they need 24/7. This has been hard on our students, parents, teachers, administrators, as well as the Board of Education. The support our families have provided our students during this period has been nothing short of remarkable. Throughout this pandemic, the health and safety of our learning community has remained our highest priority. Fair questions have been asked and raised, and they deserve a response. While I believe our session with you tonight will help you better understand our reopening plans, I would also like you to know that in November, I shared that 855 students were back on campus, engaged in some form of in-person activities, including receiving in-person instruction, accessing our Wi-Fi labs, attending childcare, or participating in athletics. Today, or this week, 688 will be back in some form of in-person activity this week. Tonight, you're going to hear more about our hiring and rehiring of key employees. Since July, we've been actively recruiting bus drivers. Since June, we've been purchasing and securing personal protection equipment and preparing our schools to reopen. Tonight, you will hear more about our building preparation and final walkthroughs that are taking place. Since August, members of the Holt Public learning community have visited neighboring districts, serving students in person to learn more about how they reopen, how they keep students and staff safe, and how we can, navigate our way to in-person instruction. We look forward to the day when our students can return to large-scale in-mass instruction. We'd also like to highlight that our families can choose to keep their children home for remote instruction if deemed a better fit. We are better together, and remember, please wear a mask, avoid large gatherings, and wash your hands frequently. While we are meeting tonight as a Board of Education, we will be hosting a similar session tomorrow night for staff, and on Wednesday, we'll be meeting with our community task force, and on Thursday, we'll be meeting again with members of our public, and specifically parents and guardians in 2 different sessions. We hope that by the end of the week, we've brought some clarity to you and our learning community. At this point, President Perry, I'd love to hand it off with your permission to Steve and Jessica.
All right, Mr. Cotter, Mr. Netzel.
All right, thank you. Just kind of going along with what David said to underscore that what we are sharing with you tonight, you've heard pieces of it throughout. We're hoping that this gives you a good opportunity to ask any detailed questions that you have or really dig into the thinking behind the plans as they are right now. I do want to emphasize that we've been thinking about being in person since July. Like we've not known when we'd be coming back in person. So much of our work has been trying to constantly be aware of remote instruction and how we can use feedback to improve and just learn more. But on the same flip side of the same coin, we've been thinking about, well, when we come back in person, what will it be like and what will it look like? So all of our plans have gone through iterations and feedback cycles. And I've shared, I think before with you guys, and I say it to Steve all the time, like I live my life in draft form. As a teacher and as a writer, like everything is up for editing at all times. And that's tough because sometimes you just want to close the loop and move on, put it in a box, but that's not really where we're at with this. This has been a lot of feedback and a lot of collaborative work. And every time I have the opportunity to work with a group of people, I'm always asking, well, what do you think about this idea and how would this work for you? And Steve and I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to meet with all of the mental health experts in the district. We brought together our counselors and our school psychs and our deans of students. And we just asked them, how are things going and what would you do different? And what do you see the needs are going in person? And it's that kind of fluidity that I think helps us develop these plans when there's so much still left unknown, and this is the first time we've ever done this. So I say that all in that as we share with you our thinking for where we're at right now, we're always open to your feedback and open to the thinking and ideas that you're hearing as well. So the process seems as important sometimes as the product itself. That listening to the feedback and really hearing our community is something we really value. So I just wanted to bring that to light. That's not always very visible in the presentations that we do. So I'm going to share my screen, start the PowerPoint that I believe you have as a part of your board packet. There we go. And just go over with you the nuts and bolts of the pieces we're going to share tonight. So we're going to start with, within your board packet, you have a transition plan. I believe it's a PDF that looks like a table with steps to it. What we tried to do is structure our presentation as you're reading through that timeline. So we'll start with our goal, philosophy, and commitments as we move in person, what we're thinking about, the return to learn plan and where it's at the moment, the protocols that are embedded within the plan, the weekly schedule, we'll talk through that, the parent and guardian commitment survey that we're preparing to come out shortly, and then the general timeline for the steps that we're gonna go through. So I also have a slide at the end of this to review our most current health metrics updated as of Friday. Any questions or thoughts at this point? Okay.
All right, good evening, board. I'm going to start with you guys talking about the document that you also have in front of you, the return to in-person instruction implementation plan. This has kind of been our guiding document as a district as we have maneuvered, like Jess said, ever since July, considering how do we return back face-to-face. We're going to use this again as our guiding document and our presentation as we move through tonight. Some things I'd like to share with you, and it reiterates what Dr. Hornak and Jess mentioned, is that we continue to edit and update. As we go through and learn more from the feedback we receive from our stakeholders, we continue to adjust this document. We want to share the details of our thinking with you tonight, the process of where we landed, where we did. And you'll notice that this plan is not structured with specific dates, but it's more as a to-do list. It's keeping us as a team on track, from departments to building level, just making sure we're all moving in the same direction. Also, just a reminder that within this document are a lot of hyperlinks where you can access further documentation to help support the work. So kind of wanted to launch with that first in this key document. Jess, you can go ahead and click on the next page. So within this document, I want to kind of highlight a few different areas. And one is keeping in mind that as we're focusing on both the adaptivity as well as the consistency and transparency. So as we have had conversations, as we've met with our stakeholders, we've had to be very adaptive through the process. Another piece I want to highlight that we'll talk about is the relationships are a priority. Something that, that came about very early in this process is the time and effort and the trust and relationships with our families and our students. Keeping in mind safety and health protocols, focus on mitigating the spread of the illness. So as we consider all of our decisions, how do we keep that in mind? The commitment to a safe environment includes cohorting students. So this is specifically at TK6. For example, within the structure of our day, keeping, for instance, first grade students together from the same class throughout the day. You'll notice we'll talk about a shortened day. This is part of the acknowledgement that of what we're doing is not traditional school. It's very different in considering that. Fewer transitions. We'll talk about how the students will spend more time in the classroom. The use of our PPE equipment, including the mandatory masks. And then finally, maintaining remote learning as an option. And I think as Dr. Hornak launched this board meeting today, I want to reiterate to our community that you have the option to stay remote. And then finally, using feedback loops in the collaborative process. There are so many powerful suggestions and feedback, and having conversations with people every day about how can we improve this plan? What are we missing? That's been an important component of it. The three parts that I want to highlight at the top of your instruction implementation plan is the goal. We want to, in regards to the process, we want to think about it in a safe and efficient return to in-person with the most pragmatic way possible. Some of the philosophy that I mentioned before on the left-hand side is consistent, safe learning experience. I like to highlight, we've provided a consistent experience for our students. Maintaining current rosters, not moving kids around. Being able to implement the safety protocols and mitigating the spread of the virus. And then finally, thinking in mind our staff, having enough resources and provide instruction both remotely and in person while maintaining a safe environment. And that is the foundation of our decisions. And then you'll notice the process for this document. It was collaborative feedback. And as we go through below, you will see how we strategically implemented different parts of the plan to build to a greater whole. So any questions on this section that we could respond to?
All right. As you'll notice in that slide, I just shrunk it down, but you see that it refers to the return to learn plan and protocols. I just wanted to go out into the website so people could see how to access that. So if you go to hpsk12.net, there is a back to school badge up here. Also a little side note, please note this non-discrimination policy here in the middle of the page. That is a new addition that we'd like the community to know about. That probably should be for a different board meeting, but just to let you know that we are committed to ensuring non-discriminatory practices. And when you click on this link, there's a way for you to report if you feel that you've experienced a discriminatory practice within Holt Public Schools. So just side note. When you get to hpsk12.net, you can click on this back to school badge. And within that are all these drop downs. At this point, you can get here and see the metrics, which we'll talk about later. But the document I want to look at currently says updated 1/21/21. That is the reopening plan that has the most information for what families could expect upon return to in-person learning. So what they would want to look for, what you all would want to look for, is the middle column. This Model 2 in-person instruction with stringent safety protocols is what we would be shifting to when we bring students back in person. You'll notice there are hyperlinks within this document so that families can look at what those protocols are. I did notice when I clicked on that hyperlink earlier, it takes me to my SharePoint space where I'm logged in. So I am not certain that families can access that without a SharePoint login. So I was gonna ask someone who doesn't have an HPS K-12 login to click on that and see what happens, and then verify with Kevin Galbraith. We can upload those protocols separately if those links aren't working for people. But once they get into the plan, there is a spot where it goes through kind of each section. This is the general overview of the expectations, just a couple of highlights that face-to-face interactions will be considered with a remote mindset. So what that would mean is in a classroom, we would still want to consider, think about the remote instruction that our students that are not there are receiving simultaneously, while also trying to preserve as much social distancing and safety within the classroom as possible. I was processing with a teacher the other day about what this might look like for them in their classroom, and it was a high school teacher, and it'll be different for all teachers at all grade levels as far as how much technology they use at any given time. But his plan was to continue using Google Classroom and using the Chromebooks within the classroom in order to avoid handing out papers to students and collecting papers all the time, which we know is good for paper consumption, which is good for the environment and whatnot, but it also reduces the spread of illness by not having to hand out papers and collect papers. So by remote mindset, we mean it won't be the typical traditional classroom that families have seen in the past. The expectation is all students will have a Chromebook every day. The district continues to purchase Chromebooks so that every student who comes in person will have a Chromebook and they can keep it and take it home and bring it back. That we will continue using Google Classroom. We will continue to post learning plans every week. So a lot of the habits we've developed remotely will continue even into the in-person environment. We will have safety protocols that will be followed. Those are linked and we can talk through those on another slide. We're going to continue to keep our learning targets reduced. In other words, we're just not teaching the quantity of targets we normally teach. We're still teaching the targets that we've identified to proficiency, but we've identified a smaller number of targets. One of our goals as we transition to in-person is to really keep a pulse on the mental health and the anxiety of both our staff and our students. Transitions are hard. Coming back in person, I'm not sure any of us can really fathom what that will feel like to hear kids in a hall and to have crowded hallways and crowded classrooms. And we don't want there to be so much pressure immediately on the academic proficiency that we lose sight of that it might be a hard transition for people emotionally too. So we're just trying to be cognizant of that by ensuring that the learning targets we agree upon are reasonable. So those types of details are outlined here throughout the whole document that will be using the personal protective equipment. There's a list here that there will be a requirement of masks everywhere, including on buses, that there will be different entrance and exit protocols by building. Some buildings have lots of entrances and exits, some don't. I have a child who attends Washington Woods typically, and she just said to me, "Mom, do you think I'll still go in the Pine Pod door?" And I was like, I am sure Mr. Sutherland will share with us exactly where you'll enter the building, and there will be rules. She's like, "Well, what about my locker?" I'm like, "You won't have a locker." So that's another piece of this, is we're not issuing lockers because they by default kind of push kids towards each other. Instead, we've changed some of our protocols to include students keeping their backpacks at their desk so they can carry their Chromebooks around with them too. So most of that is outlined in here. And each section then is kind of broken by department. There's this that is more facilities based on these 2 pages where it's the prevention and cleaning. And Rick has gone through and kind of vetted this, our facilities director, to ensure these are all the things that his department will be working on. Then curriculum department is this next section. You can kind of see it going down. Then there's special education. And I just want people to know if they have a particular question or thought about returning, that it's probably in one of these sections. You can kind of go to a section instead of, if you don't want to read the whole thing. Transportation, entering, exiting buildings, all of those are in there. Now there is a line in here that says a non-traditional school day calendar or school day schedule will be used. As of right now, it's right here. It's not a hyperlink, but as soon as the weekly schedule is finalized, it will be hyperlinked on here so families can access that document. And we anticipate that'll be finalized any day. So they'll be able to get to that here as well. So I just wanted to share with people how to get to the return to school document. It's a lot, it's 24 pages, but if you do a Control F, you can just search for the thing that you're looking for if you don't want to read the whole document. But we hope that you see through that we're really trying to balance our primary objective of learning with keeping people safe and healthy and comfortable. Any questions on this document, how to use it, how to read it, any of that stuff? Go ahead, Rob.
I don't have a question on the document exactly, but it occurred to me while you were talking about Chromebooks. We just made a big purchase of Chromebooks. Do we have enough to keep some in the elementary buildings? I can just imagine kindergartners, first grade, second graders lugging their Chromebook back and forth. I could just
Yeah,
picture
I don't think
awfully
the younger
cute.
kids
They're
will.
bigger than the kids sometimes, I
That's
think.
a really good point. Thank you for clarifying that. We are discussing by grade level that it may not be appropriate to have them take them home all the time.
That's what I was going to ask, because I just don't see that working very well.
Especially next year when we're in the fall, we'll be a one-to-one district after this, and we'll need to think about like what's our vision for how they're used in the classroom and what grade levels take them home. Under this model, there may be some online learning students still do at home, so there may be times where they do have to take their Chromebook home.
I just didn't know if there was enough to have a set in the classroom for the kids who were there, and then they
not
could keep
enough.
their other ones at home.
Not right now. I don't believe there's enough to have one at home and one at school at the elementary level. Maybe in our youngest grades. We do have some older machines that we're replacing that we could, it's a good idea to keep at the kindergarten TK level, so they have a class set and then maybe one at home. We could work towards that.
Okay, I just if you could look into that, that would ease my mind a little bit.
Got it. Other questions or thoughts on that?
Question on the face coverings. Will there be some direction given on what constitutes an adequate face covering? Because out in public, I see some very questionable choices amongst our public of what they think is sufficient for a face covering.
A face mask is not a chin strap.
Yeah, that's one. It has to go over the nose. But I've seen everything from bandanas loosely tied to neck gaiters that are one layer, when I know CDC recommends 3-layer masks for the best protection and so forth.
And I am not certain where to point you to as far as it being linked within the document, but we've been working with principals the past couple weeks with Heather Crandall's guidance. So our child care director, community director, has been having students come in since summer, and they have kind of dealt with the mask situation and what works and what the CDC guidance is. And the district mask protocol will be embedded within that return to learn plan. It will also go home with families. I want to be very to families from our building principals. I just want to make sure we're very transparent with them that we're going with the guidance from the health department, that there are right ways to wear it. There's recommendations, then there's also not right, which is kind of what you're talking about as far as different masks that aren't appropriate. And so it's not just the mask you have, but also how you wear it. And yeah, that'll be something that we share with families as well.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, any other questions on that piece? I do want to highlight a couple bullets at the bottom there that breakfast and lunch will be available to all of our TK 12 students in the buildings. breakfast will be available kind of before the day starts, and then lunch at the end of the day, since it'll be a truncated day. We'll go through the weekly schedule as best as we can with you, even though it's not finalized, but I wanted you to know that we have kind of prioritized ensuring that students get food every day. And then staffing, we're using these protocols to determine staffing. Like just today, we were like, well, we know based on the protocol, we need to clean lunch tables between every lunch and sanitize them, which if we have to run 3 lunches at the junior high, we probably will need another custodian to help get the tables clean because it's a fast turnaround. So the protocols are kind of driving, ensuring that we have the staff to carry them out. All right, which gets us to the protocol. I said protocol a lot lately. Sorry about that. By protocol, what I mean is usually an agreed upon process that we will use as a district. You just saw me pull up this list of protocols. This is the cloud space that we link all of these to the return to learn plan. So they should all be embedded right in that return to learn plan. You also, within the implementation timeline that we shared with you, that PDF, will see hyperlinked the word protocols, and it will take you to all of these as well. As I said earlier, they are quite a work in progress. We have asked Heather for her expertise. We are asking buildings as they go through their walkthroughs and have small groups in for their feedback on it. Some of them are like if staff or student becomes sick, we have a protocol around that. Some of that is guidance from the health department on how to handle that. There's a flow chart on that one. So these are all linked. You can go through them. And if you have any feedback on any of them, we'd be happy to hear it. I did show you the mask one I had on here. They're required. Wanted to just make that very clear to families that masks will be required unless there's an exemption, which is a medical exemption. Our human resources department will help people if they need a form for a medical exemption, and it's to be an approved medical exemption. So we also have face shields that staff can wear in addition to masks, but they're not required. But we have desk shields that are kept at the building for students and sanitized regularly, that will have entrance and exit protocols that will go home to families. My hope is next Monday, after we get feedback from the community and staff this week, we'll make tweaks to all of this based on feedback, that next Monday, a commitment survey will go home to families. And alongside that commitment survey will be all these protocols per building, so they can really get a feel for what the building experience will be like, since they're all a little bit different. There are cleaning protocols that, again, Rick Brown has looked through. And then this week, I think today was our first walkthrough at Wilcox Elementary. I'm not sure if there was, I think that was the only one that was today that Mr. Halgren was a part of. But we're going to do walkthroughs all week, and there's a checklist that basically is based on that return to learn plan and these protocols to ensure everything's in place. Any questions on those? No, protocols aren't super exciting, but it's helpful to have it all on paper. Sorry.
Will those walkthroughs continue even after we come back face to face, just to make sure that things are being followed?
I think that will be a constant monitoring job that the directors and central office is doing. So we did discuss earlier having follow-up walkthroughs once we have feedback and make adjustments. Maybe building in a more formal calendar of walkthroughs. Right now, we were just discussing informally of monitoring once we implement, but I could see having formal ones too.
And then are the desk shields, are they required, or is that an option for each student?
No, they're required. I don't know if you've seen them, they stand up on the desk. In most of the buildings, when we do a walkthrough, they'll be already at each student's desk, ready to go. Any other questions on protocols?
Well, I guess I have a question about the spacing. I know we talked about this at the last meeting. I know that the state says that we should maintain 6 feet of distance at all times, and that if physical distancing of 6 feet cannot be maintained, that schools should consider alternative strategies to reduce student density. So I guess I wondered if I were doing a walkthrough, Do we have 6 feet of distance between students at all times?
I would say based on today, no, the classrooms are too small for a full load. The way they were set up, they had all desks in there as if they had a full classroom, like as if, you know, every student was coming back face to face. And as I understood it, they would remove desks when they had a better idea of who was going to come back. I would say that they would have to remove, would depend on the classroom, but 25-30% of the desks to get to that 6-foot spacing in some of those classrooms.
So maybe that's it. Maybe that comes after protocols. What are the alternative strategies to reduce student density? But I guess I just wanted to ask about the 6 feet while we're at this point.
We did discuss today as a team. That's one of the reasons the commitment survey is so important, and we're sending it out February 1st at the building level. So our building principals have committed to contacting every family. So if we don't hear from someone on the survey, we're going to reach out proactively and talk to every family to get a more solid number of how many families want to stay remote. Because you're right, Amy, if everyone returned, 6 feet is very difficult and maybe impossible.
I would say impossible based on what I saw
would
today.
be a better, yeah, impossible. If we have a lower percentage return rate, then it is more possible. So it's hard right now to say exactly what we would do to mitigate the distance when we don't know how many kids we have in each building for sure. But that's definitely on our timeline of considerations, is once we have that number to build in some thinking around what do we do now if it's more than what we can do at a reasonable distance.
I would add to that, Jessica, and Dr. Haugens, thanks for mentioning that about the walkthrough. I think even with the reduced amount of students, it'll still be a challenge to keep 6 feet apart, entering, exiting buildings. We're eliminating as many transitions. I think in general, with whatever number we land on, Ms. Dalton, I think it'll still be a challenge for us to assure that to happen. I mean, it's a goal.
Yeah, when we get to the weekly schedule, which I think is next, we'll talk through that concept you see on there of a soft start and soft dismissal, which the goal of those is to reduce the amount of people coming in or leaving the building at a time. But we know that especially with the smaller kids, keeping them 6 feet apart is tough sometimes.
Well, thank you. And I definitely do appreciate that. But I guess I don't want our approach to be it's a goal when the state has clearly said maintain 6 feet of distance at all times. And the state has clearly said that if 6 feet cannot be maintained, that schools should consider alternative strategies to reduce student density. So I hear you saying that's what we're going to do. And I get it. And I'm on board with that. I want to be clear that's really important step for us, and that it's not something we're striving to accomplish, but it's something that we're sure we can accomplish.
Well, and we don't love the idea of cohorting students into an A group and a B group. We know a lot of districts have done that. We were hoping to bring students back when the health metrics were such that we could bring everybody back at once without as much concern. We know that some districts have brought students back with the cohorts, and that it's been tough to only have their kids back 1 or 2 days a week. So we know that's a strategy that districts have used, and nothing's off the table.
All right, we're going to transition into the document you guys have about the transition to in-person. And as much as I don't want to read word for word, I'm going to, because I think it's important that our public hears some of the processing that went behind the decision. So bear with me. So these schedules, first of all, I want to acknowledge, as Jess has mentioned, that these are work in progress. We're still working with a letter of agreement with their HEA. So again, these are, again, it's a draft form, but sharing this information with you is important. The schedules were designed for return in-person learning when the agreed upon metrics have been met. We currently do not have a specific return date. And I want to emphasize again, the recommendation has been since the last couple months, as the earliest is February 16th. So I want to put that out there as well. Our goal is for Holt Public to create the most robust, effective, and flexible learning experience for all students. As we look forward to bringing students back in person instruction, we were mindful of several variables which contributed to the schedules that were developed. We know not all students are ready to return to in-person instruction and have developed schedules to ensure all students feel connected to their classmates. We also collaborated with teachers regarding how to best provide remote and in-person instruction to all students while prioritizing community and social emotional support for our students. The schedules that were developed below were designed based on feedback from our stakeholders, as well as months of collaboration with the Return to Learn Committee and the HEA. Students are expected to participate in learning as outlined in schedules below. Per the state guidance continues to be that students must attend 180 days, 1,098 minutes minimum. The schedules were built below meant to reflect our commitment to those minutes over a little over a 6-hour day, while providing the learning opportunities to students in person as well as remotely. And what I'd like to share in the table below are some of the variables that drove our conversations and some of the decisions that were made at this time. We wanted to keep in mind for our students, consistent routines help reduce anxiety and cognitive load. We also want to keep in mind all students have access to a teacher for a minimum of 6 hours a day. We want to maintain a sense of school community for all students, including those that are remote for the day, and ensuring students have food, balanced meals, and proper nutrition. So those are some of the variables as we collaborated with our teams that we kept in mind for our students. For support systems and services, as Jess had mentioned a little earlier, a soft start and dismissal provide more flexibility for transportation and allow students to go into the classrooms rather than lining up. So one of the pillars that we've continued to talk about is mitigating the congestion, the loads of kids together. And you'll notice we'll talk about a soft start and a soft dismissal, which allows kids to flow directly in from the transportation right into the classroom. We also, in regards to systems, TK6 will have breakfast and lunch in the classroom. In addition, buses will be the first to drop off and the first to pick up if we can provide transportation for all, and we want to avoid food on the buses. So again, those are some of the things you'll see that we'll talk about within the schedules. Finally is the teaching and learning. A few transitions to different physical spaces possible. For example, you'll hear us talk about specials at TK6 will be remote, and those specials will be provided in the afternoon. You'll also hear us talk about providing increased planning time for teachers to honor the workload and to avoid burnout. In addition, you'll notice that again with recess, typically at the TK6 level, teachers will use it as necessary, taking kids outside based on a schedule that works with the building. Also, in addition, at the secondary level, needed to consider PECM, WTC, and other programs must be taken in account. So these are outside programs that with our schedules, we wanted to consider. And then finally, teachers having a 7-hour, 5-minute day. And one thing that I want to clarify, especially as a parent in the district, is it's going to be very, very important, as was mentioned earlier, that our weekly plans, so what our teachers send home to our families, is going to be the foundation for communication as we navigate and implement these schedules. So up on the PowerPoint, I want to reiterate a couple things I just mentioned through the top part of that document, is that TK6, it will be an 8:30 to 3:35 day, but keeping in mind that students will only be in person, the option will be around 4 hours. Breakfast and lunch will be included. All students will be remote at the end of the day and on Wednesdays. And the purpose of that Wednesday is allow for a deep cleaning to occur in our building. So we prepare to bring kids back on Thursday. And again, all specials will be remote. So when I reference to specials, I'm referencing to kinetics, I'm referencing art, music, library, There could be some other type of services that are provided in the afternoon, but again, these will all be provided through remote instruction. With that, are there any questions in regards to the weekly schedule with TK6?
Eve, can you do me a favor and this is good. Thank you so much. Can you be really specific about the 8:30 to 3:35 timeframe? What happens at 8:30? When do they get on the bus?
Mhm.
And when does remote learning start?
Yep, I will define, being thoughtful about the work in progress and the draft. Soft dismissal means kids will arrive between 8:30 and 9, Ms. Robel, and they will go directly to the class. Buses will be dropped off first. Parents will be asked to drop off maybe at a little later time. Our goal is to mitigate, again, if you've ever been, which we all have seen, the lineups at an elementary building to get in. We want to avoid that. So for example, you would see a student monitor at the front door, at whatever door is the entrance door. You would see them helping move kids into the building. Kids would go directly to the classroom. They would not wait outside. And again, that happens between 8:30 and 9. And then from 12:30 to 1 would be a dismissal. We call it soft dismissal, where we would transition kids out of the classroom directly to the bus or directly to their transportation, their ride home, and or childcare if it was offered in that building with the staffing.
Thank you.
I want to double check too. You guys, I just want to make sure you all have seen the link to the weekly schedules within the transition timeline. So we aren't in a place where we can share the details of what this looks like visually with the public, hopefully within the next day or two, but I wanted you all to make sure you knew you have access to that currently. So within that transition timeline, you can actually pull up the rest of this document that shows what it looks like at each level. I think what's hard is, and maybe it's just for me, is talking about it in the level of specificity of people's interest with what we can share until it's completely agreed upon. So I think that's hard, but we're trying to at least give people an idea that in-person instruction won't be a full day.
So is there time built in for transportation in the afternoon before the specials would start? So I can picture, it taking an hour to get everybody out of there and home and whatever, and then get in front of the computer. I didn't know how that was built into the schedule.
If you guys scroll all the way to the bottom of that document, you'll see a table that has yellow highlighting in it, and it's like a crazy schedule of like every 15 minutes throughout the day. That's the bus schedule that I worked on with Donna, and it will give you an idea of why the schedules look the way they look. We're going to talk about the secondary schedule in a second. You can see on the screen it's 7 to 2:05, and people see that 7 o'clock and they're like, holy smokes, 7 a.m. is super early. If you look at that bus schedule, you'll see.
Yeah, my kids have gotten used to 9 o'clock, pretty solidly used to it.
What's tough about the 7, so for the secondary level, the soft start is 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And that's because, and you guys who have students who ride the bus, students get dropped off at the high school during a typical year, sometimes before 7 a.m. So this isn't a change for some of our students as far as when their bus has dropped off in the past. The difference is now we need them to go straight to their classrooms. So whereas in the past they may have gone and sat by their locker with some friends or hung out in the commons, we're now asking them to go straight to their first hour. So that means we have to have an adult in that room to monitor the students as they come into the room. So my hunch is that 7 a.m. will be between 7 and 7:15 is when students will start arriving at the secondary level. But it'll be our busing, our students that ride the bus. And then of course our students that drive probably will get there a little closer to the 8 o'clock end of the soft start. So I didn't mean to like derail that. Sorry, Steve. I just want to make sure you guys knew if you scroll, like you can actually see the whole document. And that might help you as you tailor your question.
So Dr. Hallgren, reiterate the answer, yes, that was built in for transition home before we go into the afternoon remote time.
I guess I just have a question about lunches and breakfast. Given that when students remove their masks, that's the time that we're most concerned. I just wondered what, I guess I don't know how to link. I hear you say that we can see the timeline. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. So maybe this answer exists for me, but I guess what I'm wondering is for people who are the breakfast and lunch at the very beginning and end of the day. So could people choose to come after breakfast and come before lunch? And so then we minimize the number of bodies that are present when students are taking off their masks?
First, let me show you where you can find that. So you
Yeah,
can,
thank you.
Yep. On the face-to-face implementation plan that you have, if you scroll down to the second step 5 that says early January, there's a link there that says weekly learning schedule.
Thank you.
Click on that, it's right there. And then as far as your question about students, breakfast will be during the soft start. So students who have transportation could potentially not be there during that time. I think there might be some rules at the elementary level about breakfast has to be available for every kid, even if they choose to not eat it. I don't know those rules as well. The one concern we did have with lunch though at the secondary level was just safety and security, that if kids B lunch were to leave at the end of the day, that it's sometimes difficult to know if they're signing out, if they should be leaving. Like school has not actually been dismissed yet. So I think we're accountable for students from the time that they start until the time we dismiss. And that's, if they leave before the soft dismissal time begins, then they're technically leaving before the end of the school day. I'm sure our people accountant would also have some reasons that students would need to stay for the entire scheduled school day. But we also know we have families that sign their students out for, things all the time. We'll be flexible with families as they need it.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure because I know that there are other districts that do not have consumption of food on the premises, and so they send breakfasts and lunches home with the students each day. So I was just trying to understand, and if you say it's a pupil accounting thing, then I guess that makes sense to me. I guess I just wanted to understand why we were opening that possibility up, if there were other ways, but then I didn't know if that was a food on the bus issue or why that wasn't a consideration.
We actually, so this is probably the 17th iteration of this weekly schedule, and I don't exaggerate. And I think the early iterations did have breakfast, or there was still breakfast in the building, but lunch was going home. And meeting with Donna and Evan and Kim, talking about all the pros and cons of having students pick up a lunch on their way out, taking the lunch home. We discussed all the reasons we might want the kids to eat in the building at breakfast and lunchtime versus taking it home. And we did arrive at wanting them to eat at school. But we definitely did explore, and it was an attractive option of just sending home lunches. I don't know, Kim or Steve, do you want to add anything? Or
I was thinking about, Ms. Dalton, your question about like if a student does not choose to eat breakfast in the morning, for example. My hunch is that our classroom teachers, once we know the kids that are coming back, we might get some type of routine. So I don't know, maybe all kids won't be eating at the same time because there's a half-hour period, so there'll be fewer students staggering in. I'm not sure, but it's something to consider. Like how can we mitigate the spread with the mask off while they're eating? And I know there's conversations around moving the desk shields to assure that kids are not, they're eating in their desk shield, not turning to the side. So it's a challenge and something we continue to discuss daily about how to.
I feel like it does highlight the importance of, or maybe it's just a good example of when we say we design these protocols around the health metrics being met before we come back. So all along, we were thinking when we bring students in the buildings, the metrics would be really good. And then we felt more comfortable saying that they would eat in the building. So it kind of hinges on that data being met for us to feel comfortable to do that.
I absolutely understand that. Thank you.
Just to add a little logistic, if we were going to put lunch on the bus, we were going to have to put large coolers on the bus and the milk on the bus, and then have them open and closed each time that somebody was going to get them off. The bus driver can't really get out of their seat, so we would have to have an additional extra help on the bus, of which we've tried 2 years with GSRP to have extra people on the bus, and have not been takers, but the amount of coolers that we would have would diminish the space that we have for the kids. Another thing is that we do know that whether you tell them or not, they get under the seats or they lay down in the seats and they eat. They eat the food they want, and a good portion of them leave what they don't want. Even on Fridays, you know, we have those backpack Fridays and they can take that food home. And it's not about cleaning, but really we continue to get back to, this is the best place that some of them, we will make sure they get all of the nutrition, you know, that there is a concerted effort to eat. And we know that even if they get off the bus with the boxes, do the boxes make it home so they can have the lunch? And so we continue to walk through each path, what would happen to those lunches. And as Jessica had said, we continue to say, we can assure that the majority of them will have the best opportunity for all of the food if we keep it at the school.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, moving into the 7-12 schedule, Steve covered conceptually the guidance that we use to make the schedule. I showed you where to find that bus schedule at the very end of the document that shows how complex it is. 7-12 starting at 7 a.m. is when buses would arrive. I mentioned that, but the school day itself wouldn't start until 8. You'll notice on there that there's an AM and PM schedule. So it is similar to what students have currently. The big difference is the AM schedule runs in the AM, and the PM schedule runs in the PM. And the reason for that is, again, busing. It's transportation in our Wilson Talent Center students. And I realized through this process that while David and I talk often about providing a more flexible system for students and all the programs, and, you know, we've got Lucas Schraben doing amazing work building programs, this really emphasized for me that we've really got a lot of programs. So we have LCC, Holt Advantage classes, dual enrollment, early college, Peckham work experience, Wilson Talent Center. All of these things our students do run on an AM/PM schedule. So if we run those classes at the same time of day, there's going to be students who are missing those classes every day, which currently that is the case. And you may remember from the fall, there was a conversation around Wilson Talent Center and some students not being able to engage in certain Holt classes because they were at the Talent Center those hours. And we were able to work out that they were able to still work with the teacher due to the flexibility of the remote setting. But once we're back face to face, it would be, I feel like, very difficult to schedule a student to be in 2 places at once all week long. So the AM/PM schedule was designed to remediate that issue. While the 7 a.m. start time is super early, there's only 2 days a week where they actually physically have to be in the building at that time. Tuesday, Friday, and Wednesday, they do not. Wednesdays are remote for everybody, and Tuesday and Friday, the remote portion of the day is in the morning. So students don't report. The soft start is 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on those days. So you'll notice it's otherwise roughly a similar schedule, 3 hours a day, 3 classes a day, roughly 3.5 to 4 hours of instruction, that breakfast and lunch is available, and that there is still part of the day that's remote, similar to now where there can be access to teachers through office hours. We also discussed using that soft start and dismissal. Students will be coming in with Chromebooks. The expectation is they'll bring Chromebooks every day. If they don't have one, we'll issue one to them. That they could use that time almost like a mini homeroom where they could get onto their Google Classroom, set up times to meet with teachers virtually. We are working on purchasing headphones for every student if they don't have their own headphones, so that they can engage in learning during that soft start and dismissal if they should choose to. Any questions on the secondary schedule?
So I'm going to ask a question that I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but my children asked me, so I'm going to ask you. They would really, really love to come to school physically for band
Sure.
and then go home for the rest of the day. I'm going to guess that that would be a pupil accounting nightmare, which is what I told them, but I thought I would just ask, see if that was an option.
I mean, to be honest, we're all under, we declared ourselves a remote district for the year. So we're all under a remote guidelines for pupil accounting. So the difficulty comes with safety and security. So one thing we've really tried to make sure isn't happening is people coming and going from the building all day. That puts everybody at a higher risk. So we are asking that students who choose to be face-to-face be face-to-face, and students who choose to be remote be remote. We will talk about the commitment survey in a second. What we are asking is a commitment to the first 4 weeks. So students could change their mind if they wanted. It's not too far point down the road. But yeah, they're committing to a whole day. It helps too for attendance. Like, we know this student is remote, so if they don't show up face-to-face, we don't worry about them. But if a student declares being face-to-face and then they're not in class, we need to wonder, are they okay and where they are? So we do kind of have to have them declare one way or another.
No, that was a conversation I had. I just was pretty sure you guys had already thought about it as well. So
I don't blame them. I get it, but no, sorry. Any other questions on the schedule? And speaking of the survey, so this is kind of where we were headed anyway. Mr. Netzel?
Yeah, and just kind of touched on it. So right now, the tentative plan, the target date is to send this out February 1st to our families. And like we mentioned earlier in the board meeting, the plan is for these to come directly. We'll have a standardized survey, but building principals will send out directly from the home, their office. And I call it their office, and will collect the responses so that way they can complete the follow-up if not returned. So some things that we want to be really specific when we send the survey out is for parents to clearly understand the protocols, so they understand what the day looks like. I know for today, Dr. Hallgren was with me, and so was Rick with our walkthrough at Wilcox, and we had a couple of community members, and we talked very clearly about what the day will look like in that classroom and students in their seats and how it's going to be very different. So we need to be transparent as possible with our community to know what they're signing up for. The survey will not have a start date. As you know, we've been saying at the earliest February 16th. As Jess has mentioned earlier, we're looking for a 4-week commitment. And that's for a couple of different reasons. We have to take attendance, the safety of our students, for the security. Then after that 4-week commitment, we will have a proactive approach. We'll have a process, a document that will work through the building where if a child needs to switch from face-to-face or remote or vice versa, there'll be a definite process, but we want to make sure that we give our stakeholders, including our teachers and our buildings, time to adjust the numbers. So again, when the survey goes out, the goal is February 1st. We're looking for a 4-week commitment, and this will be coming from building principals. Like, in addition, on the survey, we're going to try to paint the clearest picture of what the day will look like for the students if they choose that option. And again, I know this is probably the 5th time, but I want to remind everyone that remote is still an option if that's what they choose. So.
And note to self, you all have a link to this survey within that transition timeline. And it has been updated since we took a screenshot of it and put it on this slide. We've been getting feedback on the language. I encourage you to click on that link and read through the survey and let us know if there's any question you think it's confusing or anything that you'd like us to add to it. So when you get a chance, look through it. Any other questions on the survey? Fingers crossed, we're thinking it'll go out early next week.
Yep.
All right, just to walk through the timeline. So this is the document I've been referring to, like the surveys right there in the early February step 8 box. You'll note that our timeline has big chunks of time on it instead of dates, other than this week that has the dates for all the presentations and meetings we're having. But we just wanted to show you that we do have a process in place for how we will get students back in the building, that there's been a lot of attention to ensuring that when the decision is made, we're able to respond as quickly as possible and get students in the building. So this week we have the sharing out of the plans in a couple different venues. We also have the walkthroughs that were mentioned earlier. We also know that Heather at Midway is gearing up to increase childcare. And that next week, we're hoping that we will get the survey out to families. I know Donna is working to get all her transportation information for families that will need transportation. Generally, letters go home to those families so they know when they'll be picked up and where. We also then are working on getting food next week, starting to think about what food we can order. I asked him, they were like, what can Evan order ahead of time? That's a tricky question, right? Like, you can't have the milk sitting there for 3 weeks, but you can have certain things that you freeze. So we can start getting prepared to have food. And then the week after that, looking at, not the week after, but a chunk of time after that, thinking about an asynchronous work day as a day of transition between the two modes. And you'll notice under that mid-late February, these are all placeholders. You know, you'll notice my second bullet on this slide is we're basing all these decisions on the health metrics. So you guys know I look at the metrics daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and I'm basing some of this on the current trend lines. We all know that nothing's guaranteed with that, but honestly, Michigan is one of the few orange states right now. Our data is improving. It does make me optimistic that we'll be able to continue to move in that direction of having a safe return to school. We are looking at a phase 1 and phase 2 to bringing students back into the buildings. Originally, we were thinking younger grades and then older grades, but as we got processing about what it would mean to come into the buildings first and how beneficial that might be for certain students. At this point, we've landed on phase 1, which would be the first week of bringing students back, being the students who are brand new to each building. So for elementary, it would be TK and K, maybe TKK1, some of those first graders hadn't been in the building before, 5th grade, 7th grade, and 9th grade. And what that would mean is for phase 1, those students would be in the buildings for a week with no other grade levels while we learn the protocols, practice the protocols, and do our general how things work. It'd almost be like a week-long orientation for the students who've never been in the building before. But it also would give us time to get feedback from families. How did entrance and exit go? From transportation, how is it going? So we'd have that first week with fewer kids in each building to get a feel for the protocols and how it's going before the next week when we would bring back all the other grade levels. So that's kind of how we want to ease into having all the students back in the building, continuing to collect feedback from everybody throughout that whole process. And then, 4 weeks afterwards, there'd be an opportunity for families to shift modes of instruction. If they wanted to go remote or go in person, they'll have an opportunity to do that. So you can kind of see the order of events there. Like I said, there's no dates attached to any of it because it's hinged on the health data, but that we are currently preparing to launch each step. Any questions on that timeline?
I just wanted to point out, I think that's actually really a good idea to switch from doing all, K through 5, K through 6, whatever, all together at the same time, to this model of bringing back a subset of students. I think that was a good shift in thinking, at least from my opinion. I think it's a really good beta test on that.
Yeah, I can't remember who put it out there as an idea, but I'd like to give them credit because it does allow every building to test their protocols on a smaller group of students prior to bringing everybody back. It was your idea, wasn't it, Steve? You want to take credit? That's fine.
It wasn't.
I don't really remember.
It wasn't my idea because it was too good to be my idea.
It's out there for the taking if someone wants to claim it. Other questions on the timeline?
So Jessica, just to clarify, some of the links that you were having us go to, those aren't necessarily open to the public yet, but they will be.
Correct. So
Okay.
like the survey, we're still getting feedback on. That'll go out next week. The weekly schedule, as soon as we've tidied that up with the people we're collaborating with, that'll be all done. So yeah, everything will be public.
How about the rest of the protocols, like our entrance protocols, mask protocols, all that?
Those
that
will go home to families with the family survey.
Okay.
Because they'll be a little bit different by building, just as they have their own number of entrances, exits, like patterns of drop off, all that stuff.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's a good thing to know. I know we have quite a few members of the public listening in tonight, that you will receive a communication from your building principal that will have a survey, but it will also contain a whole bunch of information that will help you complete that survey, so that you'll be as best informed as you can be. And it will have the schedule for the building, it'll have the entrance and exit protocols, it'll have all that detailed information that will help you really envision what that experience might look like for your student and help you make a decision on that survey. So watch for all that information early next week. Any other questions on the timeline?
Just given where you're at right now, we meet on February 8th. So if we make the decision on February 8th to come back face to face, everything would be ready to do that?
Everything would be in motion to be ready. I mean, there's some unknowns as far as we've posted. Dr. Quinlan will be able to tell you how many postings have gone up. We are actively in the process of hiring for all positions. The building, so the things we can control would be ready. The buildings will be ready. We will have all the procedures in place. Hiring is always a little bit of an unknown. Is that a fair answer? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it very specific, but just in general, the groundwork is laid. You're at a place where this can be accomplished, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm confident, especially this week with the walkthroughs, that our buildings are doing well. And that takes us to the last piece, which we revisit every time we meet, the metrics themselves. As I just mentioned, I've been looking at them quite a bit. The newest data is available on the district website from Friday. And just so you know, I pull the data Friday. I think I've mentioned this before. Sometimes there's a day or two lag. So I might pull the data on the 22nd, but it might be the data from the 21st. So keep in mind, 122 means the data I was able to access on 122. And on that day, I did notice that the state of Michigan data looked better than it had in a long time, and that I was seeing a trend in Ingham County that was similar. Now, region, for us, that includes Eaton County, and we do have a school in Eaton County. Ingham County has been downgraded to an orange county, while Eaton County is still red. So we do want to keep that in mind since we have a building in Eaton County. But I did want to look at the graphs with you. Make that a little bigger there. That just from the last month, we are seeing a pretty steady decline in all three categories. You can see our aim and consider down here, that we are growing. They're going in the right direction pretty consistently. And I was nervous when I was seeing these bumps in the road back in December, but seeing some pretty clear trend lines. That is also true for the new cases per 100,000, as well as the percent of positive cases, which the state actually dipped into the AIM category this past week. So I remain optimistic that we can continue to commit to these metrics and have it line up pretty well with what we'd been predicting all along. Potentially a mid to late February, we'll hit those targets. But as I've mentioned before, it's hard to predict data down to the day. And so what we discussed is wanting to ensure that the second we're in a good spot, and those are 7-day rolling averages we have discussed. We don't want to just the first day they hit say over there, because then the next day they might change. We want to make sure we're in the AIM zone comfortably that we'll be ready to launch. That's our goal, is the second we get into that space that we're ready to go. Any questions on the metrics? Any thinking you want to explore together?
Just that these metrics were, we adopted these back when,
October.
and just to acknowledge that things have changed since October.
I mean, yes. Lots of things have changed since October. I would say the data has changed significantly since October as well.
But so has the fact that we now have a vaccine.
Sure.
We know more today than what we did back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I read a lot about COVID on the weekends, and I have my favorite epidemiologists on Twitter that I follow. And in the grand scheme of epidemiology, I believe COVID is still a fairly new virus to the world, that we're still learning a lot about it. I think there is some fatigue around the metrics as far as how do you determine the aim and consider categories. I think there is some uncertainty around what would be fair thresholds. At this point, I think we're still in a good spot as far as reaching what we had committed to a while ago. But you're right in that another layer to that story is the availability of the vaccine.
So the numbers are trending in the right way, but we also know that the more contagious variant of COVID has been found in Michigan. So what if the numbers start trending the other way? What is the thinking there?
That's a great question. So as of right now, we have said that our protocols were built upon the data being met. We know the vaccine, from my understanding, and I haven't done a ton of reading on the rollout of the vaccine, but it looks like they're not anticipating full vaccination of population until fall, maybe late summer. Does that sound right to everybody? Late summer, fall. So even with the vaccinations, I'm uncertain if the data matters any less, because it would spike as you're acknowledging, and we would have to respond to that spike, because we know not all of our people have been vaccinated, so we couldn't use that as a safety measure.
Another thing to think of as well, we are coming down, which I'm very grateful that we're coming down off the peak. The peak is pretty darn high.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we are coming down, we're at a point now where, we hoped we wouldn't get to in October. So just to be cautious that, now is not the time to let off on the safety measures. Now is the time to double down on the efforts, because we know it's working. So everybody wear a mask, please. Wash your hands.
Yep, we're getting there. Any other questions or thoughts on the metrics?
I didn't want to have a thought on the metrics exactly, but I just would say, again, only walking through one building today, it was very apparent that they had been spending, it was more than a few weeks on that plan and getting things together. It was months and months and months. It looked like, an entire year's worth of effort. So I think they're as ready as they will get. I was impressed with the readiness. I think we just have to, worry again about our metrics and the other decisions we make. But I think the buildings that building at least was about as ready as it's going to get.
Good job, Lucas. Shout out to Miss Lee.
Yep. And good work, Steve and team.
Any other thoughts, questions before we shift over to staffing?
I would like to ask one question. I know there's been a lot of talk about the previous survey and the number of families that are ready to return. I'm wondering if you can clarify, have we ever surveyed families to ask them if they are ready to return?
No, so there was a survey last summer that asked what people's preference would be in June. And that was just for planning for the school year. Then the survey that went out last month in December asked if they would be interested in returning or staying remote for the entire year. And then if they were interested in returning, would they feel comfortable bringing their students back now, or would they need strict safety and health protocols in place? But we haven't had a survey with a date on it, so it's really just been about us gathering information for how we design our health and safety protocols. I'm not sure if they answered your question, Amy.
I mean, I think it did. I think the question, the way it was worded on the survey, there were 3 options, but to my understanding, they weren't about timing. It wasn't who's ready to return. It was, I'm willing to return with no protocols. I'm willing to return with strict code of protocols. I'm not willing to return.
Right.
So when I look at the number of responses and I look at the number of students, how many students do we have in the district roughly?
Roughly 5,500.
Okay. So when I look at the data, and it looks to me like 9% of students or parents said, I would send my student to learn in person, regardless of health and safety protocols.
Sure.
So I just want to be clear, because I keep hearing this 70% number tossed around,
Sure.
and I don't think there's any data that says that 70% of families are ready to return. That may be true, but we don't have data that points to that. Is that correct?
That does feel like an oversimplification of the question. I think what we were trying to honor is that everyone has different comfort levels with coming back into the buildings. And some people won't be comfortable until their whole family is vaccinated, probably won't be comfortable this year. Some people would be comfortable right now, and some people are somewhere in the middle. And it's really hard to ask a spectrum type question in multiple choice format. So I do apologize if that led to confusion for families or misunderstanding. We were using that to kind of get an idea of how many students would potentially stay remote. So as we designed the protocols, we had a general idea in a classroom of how many desks we might need. Knowing it wasn't a random sample and knowing that people might change their mind. So it's really just gathering of information.
Sure. No, I understand. I just want to make sure that we're clear to the community that we don't have data that says that 70% of students are ready to return.
Right, correct. We had some data that said families would send their student back if strict health and safety protocols were in place. And that's really what we were looking for, is what was our community's feeling on the preparation for return. Now the survey that you're going to get next week, that's the one that will be, are you staying remote, or are you interested in returning in person? That one we will have a little more follow-up with.
And that's what I was going to ask. Are we confident that survey will be? I guess it's going to be thorough. We're going to get as many parents to respond as possible, right? The building principals are going to follow through on the ones that don't respond.
I've had the building principals have said to me, I will be calling every person, because they want to know. They want to know what they're expecting in the buildings and how to carry out their protocols.
Yeah, but even with that, I would be very surprised if they got a response from every parent, having tried to track down and do that kind of thing before. But we should get a pretty good idea.
100% is a challenge. You're not wrong. Any other questions for me or Steve?
We surveyed the educators, teachers, support staff, and do we have a number of how many of those want to return?
I believe you'll get that information from the human resources presentation. All right, well, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
But just to reiterate, the parents, everyone who's watching this, please respond when that survey comes out. We need that information. It's not a we would like it. We really need it to make good decisions about how to space the rooms and all sorts of things. So please respond to that survey.
All right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Quinlan. Pete was on here at one time, but I don't see him. But
Good evening. Yeah, we're both here. We're hoping today just to share with everyone what we've been working on and where we are at with current staffing, including where we are with physical and emotional health of the staff as well. So we'll hopefully be able to walk through all of that today, and feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have any questions. So we've been balancing a proactive hiring approach this year with piloting some new protocols as we work, like we said at the last board meeting, with Great Lakes Equity, and taking into account some of our other stakeholder groups for developing an action plan to hopefully come to the board for district hiring protocols. But in the meantime, so we are piloting those, but we are continuing to search for quality candidates in all of our high need areas. So hiring is just ongoing all the time here in Holt Public. Some of you may have noticed the buses all over the district with "we're hiring bus drivers, we need bus drivers." I'm happy to report today the work of Donna and the transportation department. We are nearly fully staffed. We're working with one more bus driver to onboard, a few more pieces there, and then we're working on some standby drivers. So we're really in a nice spot there with our drivers. And currently we are working on reaching out to all of our furloughed staff, looking to see who is interested in being recalled to return for our in-person learning.
Can I ask a quick bus driver question to clarify?
Sure.
Is that based on the feedback you got about who needed transportation, or is that in other words, is that as many bus drivers as we need in a normal year, or is that based on the number that we need based on the responses of the parents?
Donna's here, but I believe she could answer. But yes, it's what we know we need for full transportation to accommodate all of our students and families.
Thank you.
That is correct, Erin.
So we would conceivably, we're going to need to hire more next year, assuming next year, hopefully we go back to a full busing schedule. Or is that, or do we have enough now to do a full busing schedule? I was just assuming that some parents would have said, no, I'm going to drive my kid to school rather than busing.
We're not finding that enough parents on the same route are saying that they will not send their students back. So I don't believe we're going to, our probably best case scenario is that buses will just be less full, but we will be fully staffed for a regular number of students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
While we're on busing, I had a quick question for you, Donna. Are we limiting the amount of kids that can be on a bus?
No, we are not. Well, I mean, the natural capacity is 77 students, but not other than that. There's not going to be social distancing available on the buses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have been reaching out to all of our furloughed staff to see who is interested and available to return to the buildings starting in February. When the firm start date is agreed upon, we will be working with these staff members regardless of when that return is. They will be helping to prepare buildings and working to support in any capacity we need for meaningful work within the buildings. And I'll touch a little bit more on how we're planning for extra support needed in each building as we return to in-person as I move along here. In terms of health and safety, Peter and I are working with the health department on a case-by-case basis, sometimes daily basis, for any potential questions we need to bounce off them, protocols, if we have a close contact exposure, if we have a positive case. So we are working closely with the health department. We are also reviewing all facility use and group safety plans, whether that's for athletics or a potential club that needs to meet outside. So we are working with the staff members, the heads of the departments, to work through those safety plans. In terms of the EAP for all staff, I requested a status update just to give you a little information today. They'll give us quarterly utilization reports. They can't tell us how many people have actually accessed the portal and the web platform. Informal data tells us quite a few people have. We've received a lot of positive feedback. They could give me information that at least one staff member has utilize the clinical aspect of the EAP. So I thought that was at least nice to share with you with only a few weeks into the EAP. And we are discussing how we might be able to do some type of survey once we return to in-person, to check in on staff, and or an opportunity to anonymously report concerns that they're having, whether it's regarding safety or anything else, just to make sure staff feels like they can reach out to us with any of those questions or concerns. So in terms of in-person hiring needs in the fall, Trustee Ms. Robel, we talked about in the fall, all staff were encouraged to reach out to HR if they had any concerns. It was confidential in terms of if they, had a medical issue or were just scared. And we engaged with all staff who reached out at that point. In December, principals and directors encouraged all staff to engage with HR again regarding any concerns regarding returning to in-person instruction. And we sent a formal all staff email on January 14th for a final reach out regarding not returning, and that we needed to hear from our staff. So just for adequate planning and just to start that engagement process. So we have reached out. What we're working on right now, we are committed to having permanent building substitutes. These would be certified teachers and at least permitted substitutes to support the urgent coverage and academic support when possible in the buildings. Right now, we're committing to 1 to 2 building support permanent substitutes at the elementary and middle school levels, and 2, possibly a few more at the junior high and high school level to support whether they're emergent needs or planned needs of the building to support the students and staff in the building. And we have also put out a few postings for support personnel in all of our TK6 buildings. These are just general building support personnel to support arrival, dismissal, those soft start times, soft ending times, lunch, and any other health, safety, and academic support that may come up during the school day. Many of our employees have the option, some of our recalled furloughed staff, they can also support in these roles in addition to the roles that they were supporting pre-returning in person, if that makes sense. So you might have been a crossing guard, but now you may be able to also support in one of these roles as well. So that's an option and opportunity for our staff. Feverishly and currently, most of our building principals and directors are reviewing and hiring building substitutes and that support staff that I just talked about, where we have those postings up. We're trying to find as many people that are willing to come work and support our students in Holt Public. But I also just wanted to mention that we also have the ongoing hiring and support of our regularly occurring leaves. FMLA leaves that come up for our staff, maternity leaves, for example. So in addition to the building support positions, we're also dealing with just our regular occurring leaves and filling those positions. So this might be what you really are interested in seeing. As of the December and January final reach out to staff, we've had about 50 staff members since January 14th, or they had already previously reached out. So I re-engaged with them, have engaged with HR regarding taking a leave, whether it's an FMLA certified leave or an unpaid leave, or possibly resigning when we return to face-to-face instruction. I'll have a graph or chart for you on the next page, but 25 staff members are pursuing a leave, but likely to return to work once they are fully vaccinated. That's where they're at right now. And I just wanted to give you as much information as I have today on that. An additional, so separate from that 25 staff members, an additional 16 staff members are currently pursuing FMLA unpaid time or are planning to resign when they're called to return to face-to-face instruction.
Sorry, Erin, is that 25 a subset of the 50 ahead, or is that an additional 25 and the 16 accordingly? In other words, we have almost 100 people who are considering leave?
The 50 was encompass the 25 and the 16.
Okay, thank you.
So this first chart is just really giving, without giving any identifying information, just as the board, I know you were really interested to know where we were at. This would be a breakdown of our staff at this point who would prefer to return upon being fully vaccinated. If that's not the case, they are going through the interactive process with HR right now for pursuing a leave. Whether that would be certified through FMLA or potentially unpaid.
Dr. Quinlan, approximately when would that be, fully vaccinated?
Well, Dr. Hornak will have a little more information in his portion on the vaccines. So I'm probably not the expert on that at this point.
Okay.
And then I can show you the other chart of where our staffing needs will potentially be when we have staff currently pursuing a leave and continue to engage with HR right now. This would be regardless of a vaccination. These are the areas that we would be looking to hire long-term substitutes or fill positions. And so we are currently working as fast as we can to ensure these employees have the information they need to make informed choices for their own health and safety with their family situations as well. So we're working through all of that, trying to take great care to ensure that we're, answering their questions and making sure they're supported. And where we're going next, like I said, we're going to continue to engage with these staff regarding their potential leaves and eligibilities and also really engage with what might they need to feel comfortable returning face-to-face if it's extra PPE or what we might be able to do. That's not going to be the case for everyone, but we are committed to working with all of our staff to make sure we're having those one-on-one conversations and trying to meet their individual needs. We are engaging with staff with documented medical disabilities as defined by Americans with Disabilities Act to, if they have accommodations recommended by a physician, we are determining if it's reasonable to accommodate, if they can continue working. So we're working through that as well. And honestly, we're working to get a full commitment for these leaves to fill positions as soon as possible. So that's really what we're working on. And this is up to date as of right now. When I started giving this presentation, I'll be honest, we had a firm date of we needed to hear from staff by January 20th if they were having any concerns or how we might be able to support them. I feel like we still might get more. Someone just today mentioned, did you hear from this person? I said, no. So, I think that is potentially still out there, but this is the best information we have right now.
So Dr. Quinlan, I have a question. This is very thorough, so thank you for that. Did I miss it in here on how many people actually responded via email or, reached out to you or Peter?
It was about 50. I didn't go back and count every email, but I have my every email I respond to, I document on a spreadsheet. So we had about 50 that, and like I said, it was 50 this morning. I think it might be 52 from today that I responded with, but it's right around 50 that we've engaged with from all stakeholder groups, or, from all areas.
Okay. I feel like it's going to be higher than that with what you just said. Is there a way, and I don't want to have survey fatigue for the educators, but is there a way that we could survey them like through anonymous Qualtrics or something like that to say, do you want to come back? Do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable? And see if we can get more than 50, because I think we have 800 employees across the board. So I'm just wondering because the last thing that I want for you is if we do return and then you get 300 emails saying I'm not coming back because I don't feel safe or I'm not ready or I'm on maternity leave, that kind of thing. So is that a possibility or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a possibility. We can certainly discuss how we might get that information. I could, yeah, we can discuss that, and we can throw it through SAC again to see what we think. My only question would be, if it's anonymous, how do we reach those staff members who aren't still reaching out to us? I mean, I'm just asking that question. I don't know the answer, but
No, I agree. But if it's an anonymous, yes, I'm not coming back, then maybe we can somehow reach out to say, hey, we need to know that you're not coming back.
right. And I don't think it's out of the realm, and we can discuss how we might be able to disseminate that. I had one other thought in my head, but I'm losing it. We did, and just so you know, in the email we sent, it was very thorough about what your options are. So we were trying to be thoughtful in the fact that someone saying they're not coming back, what the ramifications are, that, if you don't come back and we have, there's ways to qualify for FMLA. If you don't qualify for FMLA, you would be going unpaid. That doesn't count towards service time for ORS, for retirement. You wouldn't be eligible for benefits. So we tried to lay it out as honestly as we could. But that would be, and that we try to do it on that level just to make sure that we were saying, please talk to us so we can give you your own personal, information, because everyone has an individual need. But yeah, it's not out of the realm. I think I want to discuss it with the team to see what information we could gather from an additional survey, but I don't think it's a bad idea. And you're right. I mean, if we're being honest, it is scary. We don't know what's going to happen. And all of a sudden the day is set to return. What happens if 17 teachers at one school decide to not come back? I mean, that's a real possibility and scary. So you're not wrong. And I definitely think we would want to think about pursuing another survey.
Thank you.
I wanted to echo that. I think that there's a level of comfort in coming back that's different than, if I don't come back, my livelihood changes and there are these other ramifications. And so kind of, I think, surveying and hearing about that level of comfort, or that, I think it's important to hear.
We've tried to be clear with all of the people that reached us, is we do not have any paid leave that would cover them. So even an FMLA is an unpaid leave. They could get their insurances paid if they're taking insurance, but it is unpaid. And we've tried to stress to the people that is what you're rendering your decision on. We could, in theory, at least establish a date that we need to know by X, whether you're coming or going. The problem with that is if they change their mind, we don't have any particular clubs, for lack of a better word, or to change their mind. And that's why we've been talking about unpaid leaves. We could say, if you don't come back, you're terminated or you're resigning, but that makes no sense long-term. So we don't have a lot of leverage to get a clear answer, and it could change day to day. So we're trying to get as much information as we can that's valid, but we're kind of at a loss to tie it down.
Any other questions for us?
All right, if not, we'll move to the vaccine update and discussion next on the agenda. Dr. Warnock.
Yep, thank you, President Perry. And I feel like I am letting you down by not having a presentation tonight. I just have some brief comments. Through a partnership between the Ingham County Health Department, the Ingham ISD, CARE, ATC, and SETSEG, educators across our area gained access to the COVID-19 vaccine recently. We are all in what is called a 1B, category 1B. School districts currently offering in-person instruction have been prioritized to receive the COVID-19 vaccine first at the MSU Pavilion. The likes of Leslie, Dansville, Stockbridge, Weberville, and I think Williamston potentially all have had their vaccines. I believe that those who are scheduled to open before us, such as East Lansing, Hazlet, and Mason, have either received their vaccine or scheduled. As a result, districts like Holt, Okemos, Waverly, and Lansing remain in a holding pattern as we have yet to receive our registration link to schedule. I am aware that Sparrow and McLaren have opened up vaccination sites, and members of our learning community have either received their first vaccine or are scheduled to receive their initial vaccine in the near future. Nothing is preventing our staff from seeking the COVID vaccine from Sparrow, McLaren, or any other trusted source. For those waiting for the Holt public registration link, I intend to forward that to staff as soon as we receive it, and I will alert building administrators to ensure that everyone can promptly register for an appointment. This opportunity is open to all of our employees, including interns, edu staff, and our high-tech employees. With that, I'm also aware that a large number of our faculty and staff have either gone through, as I had mentioned, or will be getting a vaccine this week. While I had really hoped that we would have our entire district vaccinated by now, I believe what has occurred organically actually strengthens our organization. I've been reading about best practices for organizations in scheduling vaccines, and in the end, staggering the vaccine appears to be considered one of the best practices as it avoids potential side effects impacting the entire organization at the same time. While I don't think there are widespread side effects with this particular vaccination, what is occurring seems to be okay for Holt Public, and like I said, I think it kind of strengthens where we're at. Our childcare staff and other serving students in person have been prioritized and will be receiving vaccines this week while the rest of us wait for that widespread link to sign up for our vaccinations. So that's where we're at today.
Dr. Hornick, do you mind if I say something I forgot to mention to you earlier? If anyone that received your email asking them to let the ISD know that they were interested in receiving the vaccine, if they did not go out and fill that form out and they are listening today, they can send it to me and I will forward it on to the ISD administrative assistant to the superintendent. She would need to have that information. So only those who filled out the form will be contacted. So if you did not fill out the form, please send me your information. I will forward it down to Ms. Weathers, and she would need your cell phone, your name, and your email address.
Ms. Lopez, let me clarify that those are the faculty and staff that have been prioritized, correct? That are on the.
It's really any faculty and staff. So faculty and staff, I spoke with Ms. Weathers today, and she said that they were scheduling, as you mentioned, anybody that we have that's working already in person. But I had a couple of employees contact me to say, I did not fill out that form that Dr. Hornick sent out. And so I asked her since I had the opportunity to speak with her, hey, I have a couple of names. And she said, oh, if they didn't fill it out, I won't be reaching out to them. So any one of your employees that did not fill that out that would need a vaccine through the health department and through the ISD, please have them send me their name, email address, and cell phone number so that I think she is actually doing the scheduling for the ISD schools. So I wanted to bring that. You and I haven't had a chance to speak to each other since I spoke with her. So I thought it warranted, since we have such a large audience tonight, it warrants mentioning that if they did not, in any capacity, whether you're seeing people in person or you're not yet, but still need to be vaccinated and are waiting on the ISD Ingham County Health Department vaccines that we are waiting on. We need to get that information in as soon as possible to get you scheduled. Does that clarify?
It does. Folks, we'll send out some additional information on that as I just want to kind of work through that with you before we collect that accordingly.
Got it.
Okay.
So when you say faculty, you're speaking of edu staff and high tech as well, right?
We are, and including interns.
Okay. And then do we have a process to, you know, as soon as we hire, that new hire can get vaccinated?
That will be something we will work through with the intermediate school district and the health department. So I would assume that that's a yes. But again, we need to make sure that we have, you know, clear-cut protocols. So we're collecting the information accordingly and then sending that off.
So what's, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying is we don't have a clear count, but we have a feel for what percentage of the you know, the teachers have been vaccinated to at least the first shot. Let's put it that way. I don't think anybody's gotten 1 and 2, but.
Yeah, so Dr. Leonard, we have not polled our staff. That would be something maybe we could add in that survey to say, have you already done that? The initial link that went out was nothing more than, do you want a vaccine or not? It did not collect names. It did not collect contact information. It was just, of the Holt public faculty and staff, how many would be interested? And it was the health department's ability and the ISD's way of finding out how many, what's the demand? You know, how many in Ingham County of all of the faculty and staff in our districts, how many would want a shot? And that's how they were trying to then batch us accordingly. So we have, I can tell based on social media, a number have gone out, but I don't know what that number is.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, Dr. Hornick, just to clarify, you're going to regroup and touch base with the ISD and then send an all staff email regarding where we stand with the ISD Holt all staff vaccination process?
I will do that.
Okay,
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is public comment. And for those who would like to address the board, this is the time in the meeting you can do so. Please remember that this is not a dialogue between yourself and the Board of Education. However, we may take some notes and follow up with you at a later time. We ask that you be courteous. We also ask that you do not use any employee name or student name. And lastly, there is a 5-minute limitation. For those that have signed up early, I'll have you call them, Ms. Bureau.
James Lennon.
Good evening. Didn't know I'd be first, but I first want to thank the board for all of the awesome information that you guys gave. As a community member that's listened to these board meetings for the last, I don't know how many months at this point, we've heard a lot of truncated information through the board meetings, which is really based off of your, I think your behind doors meetings and the meetings that you have amongst each other throughout the week. I think this meeting really went into detail about all the work that you guys have been putting in to the process of getting kids back into school. So it was good as a community member to see all of this information in a non-truncated fashion. So I really appreciate the admin folks and the board allowing that to happen and giving the community members the time. Really just a few points. I do want to thank one board member for speaking tonight, specifically to the data that we've learned since last fall, since a lot of schools have gone back to face-to-face learning. The board member did recognize that the data has changed. We have learned certain things about the virus that is different than what we knew in October. So I do want to thank that board member for doing that. And just to be specific, schools like DeWitt, Hazlitt, East Lansing, Okemos, they've sent messages to their community members, and this is their specific language. The previously approved metric plans that we have agreed to in the fall have outlived their relevance. And this is specifically in regards to what these schools have learned about the virus and how it transmits among kids. This is something that we've learned from Brighton, which is a bigger school district than Holt. They've been a great test for this face-to-face program in the midst of COVID. So I really want to challenge everybody to look at the Brighton School District. They have all their numbers online and available to folks to see what they've done. They didn't have to go to virtual once, except for the November, December shutdowns. And they've navigated this storm pretty well. As a community member, long-term community member, I am a little frustrated. I've gotten 4 texts in the midst of this board meeting tonight of kids' parents that I've coached in multiple sports that stated they were leaving the school district as of today. As a champion of this district, I'm extremely frustrated. I'm frustrated by the deliberate misleading of the dialogue of the board meetings. You have sent 2 surveys out. No matter if it is 9%, it is 9%, but 70% of those that answered responded that they would like to go back to face-to-face learning. We just heard that we didn't even get a full response from our staff and teachers on the surveys that have been sent out. We cannot continue to wait until we get 100% return. Moving on, Dr. Fauci has even said that we need to get kids back to school. It's super important. We have an issue with structure, a serious issue with structure with our kids and teachers, in all honesty. My son 2 weeks ago had one class day where 2 out of 6 teachers showed up to class. 2 out of 6. He was forced to be in front of his computer for the full day, but the teachers weren't. All right. One of my son's teachers cut a class at 5 minutes because he said he was stressed and needed to take a bike ride. My son had to stay in front of his computer, but the teacher was taking a bike ride. We are frustrated as parents. The kids need structure. The teachers need structure. That's very clear to us at this point. I have no doubt that they're working hard. Everybody's stressed, but some structure will do everybody good in this scenario. I don't think I need to talk about the mental health, the failure rates. I think everybody's very clear on that one, but we got to work harder to get our kids back. We got to be honest about the new data that we're learning. We teach kids science in this school. We need to actually look at it and pay attention to it and follow it. That's all I have to say tonight. I wish you guys the best.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lennon. Before the next speaker, I just want to make something clear that our board meetings are public and that we as a board don't meet behind closed doors. Ms. Bureau?
That was the only one for the pre-signing up. If you have lots of names or hands up, so we'll start with DB. DB, you need to unmute. Okay, I guess we'll go on to the next one. Jen Jones. Jen, you also need to unmute. Okay, I guess we'll go on to D. Watson.
Is there something stopping people from being able to unmute maybe? Seems strange it would be 3 in a row.
I was just wondering the same thing.
I texted Kevin Galbraith. I'm guessing he's,
I'm here. I'm not aware of anything on this end. I've been sending the message to our community members that have been promoted to talking to unmute, but I'm not receiving a response either.
Okay. Some of them have been up for me. They've changed their mind. We'll go on to Carrie DeBerry.
I didn't mean to put my hand up to wave. I'm sorry.
But we know it's working.
Odette Levique. T. Williams.
Yeah, I have a question. As a parent, I was forced to leave my job working as a Holt employee and to stay home to teach my kids. So with that being said, I had to resign from my job and don't know where I'm going to go. Okay, let me ask you this. What am I supposed to do when unemployment runs out and my kids are not in school? They're losing it because they're not in school. They have no sense of where to turn, who to turn to. They're lost. They just got their report cards. They're completely failing. They have no sense of activity outside of the home with other kids. They need to be back into school. With that being said, I had to resign from my job, give a letter. So what do I do as far as now I have to go in and try to find a job after unemployment, which I want to come back there, but I have to go through the whole hiring process, but I can't do anything until my kids are back into school. What do you say for parents?
Dr. Quinlan, can you follow up with her?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Bureau?
Carrie Boomershine Whitbeck.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, sorry, I had difficulty unmuting. I'd like to say hi to all of the board. Like one of my fellow parents stated appropriately at the last meeting, I'm a longtime listener and a first-time caller. First-time caller because I put faith in the Holt School Board. They would do what was in the best interest of all of my students. I now have little to no faith in the district who has failed my sons. I am a Holt alumni, nurse, and educator. I have 4 children, 2 of which are school-aged, a 13-year-old with a learning disability and a 4th grader. The remote learning plan was put into place to be a temporary flatten the curve. We were told you were all following the data and your metrics which should have had our children back in school in August. We were told to sit by and wait each month, expecting you would do what was right by our students. Each month, nothing new was presented. It is too little, too late. There have been a non-reversible loss of learning and significant negative emotional impact, which has occurred on all of my children, and they are not alone. My 4th grader has face-to-face instruction twice a day for 30 to 45 minutes, along with 30-minute live instruction a week. The rest of the learning is left up to my 9-year-old to perform independently during the day or is saved for nights when both of my husband and I, who are essential workers, are home to help. My 13-year-old has been let down the most. He is struggling to keep his head above water. He's receiving minimal accommodations, which I've had to fight for. He is not receiving any instruction pertaining to his learning disability, though requested multiple times. Sending emails is not the best option for a student who has a reading and writing learning disability. I'm terrified to know what his true reading level is now after a lost year once he finally receives an evaluation. As a nurse and an educator, I get it. It may be scary to take the first step back into a school, but it needs to be done. I have taken the first step back into the hospital. I've taken the first step back into a school. The wheel does not need to be reinvented. Consult with schools similar to us, make adjustments, and open up face-to-face instruction. Living in fear is far worse than the negative long-term impact of this makeshift remote learning model. I have had our students in this fellow district as patients that also. The data would prefer to present would be that of our current failure rate in the district. I want to know how many students are failing just like my son. What students are operating in makeshift or no IEPs or plans. The overall failures of our special education department, along with how many of our students have had to seek help for mental illness as a result of this prolonged unnecessary isolation they have been forced to endure. As a pediatric nurse, I've witnessed this firsthand in our community. The idea of going back should have an option for complete face-to-face all-day program, not just half-day option. Many students are struggling with remote. Bringing them back for half a day is not appropriate. They need to plan for full face-to-face learning, not a half day and then remote. Will you offer a plan for face-to-face options? The survey that comes out needs to be a clear, non-biased survey to truly convey and not manipulate the data to serve the district's agenda. Let the teachers who can teach in person teach. Let those teachers who cannot teach in person teach those students who wish or need to stay at home. Many of our Holt faculty should be comfortable teaching in person. They are comfortable coaching sports and having their children attend sporting events and other public activities. As COVID, contact is not a vector of transformation. Did I hear you correctly say PE is being to be at home? We can open our gyms for the Holt basketball programs, but not for our PE in our elementary schools. Our school is in Michigan, has one of the top rates of obesity and specifically childhood obesity. Questions about the dates, the metrics would not indicate us returning ever. The metrics you want to achieve are stricter than the rate of flu and need to be changed accordingly. Thank you, and thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you.
Carissa Blankenberg.
Hi, everyone. Real quick, I just want to thank you all for all that you do. I'm thankful to report I have had the opposite, and that's not to minimize what I'm hearing, because I hate to hear any community member struggle in any way. I truly have empathy for anyone who is not experiencing what I'm experiencing, but I would be remiss if I didn't share that my kids, and I am fortunate to be home by the grace of God. I am very fortunate in that matter, but I have elementary son and a junior high and a high school student that's actually doing better remotely than in person. So I just want to share that, there are other sides as well. And I think it's good to have all viewpoints on this because this is a fluid situation. And this is something that is very, very difficult, even in comparison to other schools. So hats off. And I commend you all for what you're doing and what you've already done. I just have a suggestion because I want to hopefully try to bring a solution if there's any that can be brought to. Have you considered, or has there been any thought to, when I heard staff not really respond to the surveys, and I can get why. I mean, I'm sure many of them are scared. I heard someone on the call say they were a Holt teacher or a Holt employee and they're not working. So those surveys are very difficult, but to bring forth more transparency, has the board or the superintendents or any decision makers considered asking the question of employees who'd be willing to come back to work and remain remotely, especially for the high risk staff that you have that may be really afraid to return, but have the option to continue to work remotely. And I don't know how you guys are going to break up the staff. I know that if I, as a parent, has an option to remain remotely, I certainly will, because I feel that it'd be safe. We have high risk, my husband's high risk. So those types of things that would impact. So I would prefer to stay remotely. But with that, is there an option for teachers or any staff member to maintain working remotely to address those remote folks? I think this would resolve and reduce holistically the in-person class size. I don't know. I haven't seen a survey that said that, especially from a parent perspective, to say, would you rather, so that you can actually get a number of parents that would rather stay remotely and those that would rather go in person, and then make adjustments, by splitting up the staff to say, okay, these folks will, work in person and these folks will work remotely. And maybe you could get more buy-in. Just a suggestion. Thank you again for all you do.
Thank you.
Brandon Curran.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Hello. Okay, we're good. All right, so I am going to be concise tonight, which is a skill that I am not known for. I am Brandon Curran. I am the Holt Education Association liaison to the Board of Education, and I come here tonight just with a few words. The Holt Education Association remains committed to the health and safety of our Holt students, staff, families, and communities during this global pandemic. The metrics that have been agreed upon by the Holt administration and HEA and adopted by the Board of Education provide an objective guideline intended to protect our families. With the advent of the new, more contagious strain of COVID-19 just beginning to make its way through Michigan, the association remains as committed as ever to these metrics. The association's first priority has been and will continue to be providing a high-quality education to our students while protecting the health and safety of our community. Thank you guys for this opportunity to address you tonight.
Thank you.
Antoinette.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, am I too loud? Okay, my name is Antoinette and I am a teacher and a parent of 4 students in this district. I have 1 student at the junior high, 1 student at the middle school, and 2 students at the elementary school. I want to first of all thank all of the board members, the curriculum office, every person who has worked long hours and worked tirelessly to come up with a plan and rechange the plan. So I want to thank you for that. I also would like to thank you for keeping in mind the health and safety of not only all the staff and students, but also the community. Because as we're home, we're not spreading to our whole community as well. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for everything that you're doing and all the things that you are considering as well.
Thank you.
Sarah L.
First, I'd like to say thank you to all of the board members for your time and attention and dedication to the Holt School community. Tonight, we heard more detailed information about the face-to-face learning option and what that might look like, in particular from 7 to 12:30, that half-day scenario. In future communications, additional detail about what remote learning will continue to look like during that time period would be really helpful for parents carefully weighing decisions and different options, and also more detailed information about how teachers will be supported when the expectation is that they are addressing both students in person and remotely simultaneously. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ken Finney.
Good evening, and first of all, thank you guys for all being here tonight. And it does seem like you're working very hard at this. I'm one of these parents, though, that my student has miserably failed at remote learning. So I'm looking forward to coming back, but I'm not happy about a half day and then half remote. I think he may pass half the classes and the other half he's going to fail again. Students out there are different and everybody learns in a different way. There are many of them out there who do not work under this remote learning thing. It just didn't work for them. I would like to know if we could get the numbers on the thousands of students that we have here at Holt, how many either failed a class or failed multiple classes, so we could get an understanding of how well we really did do. Again, I thank you for the hard work. It is not an easy time. I'm one of the frontliners, so I know what you're facing, and it's you got a lot of work ahead of you still. But I still think we've got to do something for the kids who do not remotely learn well, and that's about the best I can say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie Cruz.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I would like to say I have 3 grandchildren here through foster care, and my 3rd grade granddaughter came to Holt with 31 minute or 30 words per minute. In 4 months, Mrs. Knuckle has brought her to 66 words. So with that being said, at some point, kids also have to be responsible for their schooling. We can't keep enabling them. If they were at work, they still got to do their work. If you're at home, you got to do your work. So I just want to say thank you. And I know everybody's been working really hard, but that means a lot to me because she was really behind. That's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Lisa B.
Hi, this is Lisa Bremer. I talked at the last meeting. I want to thank you for sharing your plan. I think that a lot of us had an idea that nothing was being done. We hadn't heard anything, we hadn't seen anything. We heard a lot of, we don't know how to do that. And I think that led quite a few of us to just believe that there wasn't any plan. So I really appreciate hearing it and having it presented to us. I want to say that I have 2 sons, and one is doing great with online learning. He's fine. The other one is struggling, and he's not struggling because the learning is hard or because his teachers don't care, because they do, and they've been phenomenal with him. He's struggling because he can't find the motivation. He's isolated, he's alone, he's staring at a computer screen all day, and it's tough. So I have 2 kids, totally different experiences. I see the plan. I hear the plan. We have the equipment in place. And what I see stopping us from returning is our metrics. And they haven't been changed. They haven't been reevaluated. And not only have they not been reevaluated, but I hear that we are solidly, and to use an unpopular word, stubbornly committed to them. Our government, our state government, our national government, they are all advocating for the return to in-person learning. We have districts like Brighton, Zeeland, Hamilton, who have all returned, who have similar demographics to ours. And I have friends and family who have children who go to those, and they have had either no interruptions to their learning or 1 to 2 interruptions to their learning. They are not seeing this horrible, terrible experience that we seem to have in our district that's going to happen if we return to in-person learning. I haven't heard any data on student failure rates. That's not been shared with us. I haven't heard any data on student transfer rates. That has not been shared with us. I haven't heard discussion of the physical and mental health of our students discussed like it has about the teachers. We are here to serve the children of this community. We are here to serve the students. And I don't see that. I see a lot of concern for the people who are supposed to be there for them. I am an educator. I am out in the schools. I've said that before. My job is to travel and to go to classrooms. I go all over the state, multiple districts. I am out there. I am at risk. My husband is high risk, and he has been out there since the pandemic started. He does not have any leave time, neither do I. We're in this exact same position, and our choices are to go to work and to do our jobs or to not have a job. We can't hold our organizations hostage. We have to do what we were hired and are required to do. And I just want to end with, my son was watching the board meeting with us and listening to some of the things. And he said to me, "Mom, why do you and Dad have to go out every day? Dad's high risk. Why do you have to go out every day and support the people that you're working for? And no one's supporting us. They don't have to support us." What do I tell them? You're not as important as the people, as the organization that my work supports. If you're doing okay, that's good enough. So I want to just really, really beg of you to really focus on our students and on our kids. Look at the data, be transparent about the data about our kids, share it with us, and revisit those metrics and listen to our government that's saying it's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danita?
Hello, thank you. First of all, great job. I mean, I know that this is nothing that anybody has done before. So you guys are doing what you can. You guys are learning as we go. I understand the struggles from the parents. I work full-time outside of the home. My husband works full-time. I have 4 students. We did pull 1 student from the school district this year. I have, the other 3 still here, failing miserably. But I am also one of those parents choosing to keep my children home when we do go back face-to-face because of health risk in my home. So the questions that I have, to get answers for are, you guys are talking about breakfast and lunch for the students in school. How is that going to look for students that are staying remote? I know that we have the pickups. I do that every week right now. Is that going to stay the same? Is that going to change? How is that going to work daily? Also, how is the instruction for remote students going to work coinciding with face-to-face? Because my students are worried about that. They're like, we're not going to be in person, so we're kind of worried about not getting the same attention or getting, the same care that they're going to be getting because they're already struggling and seeing that now. And then everybody's asking about the numbers on the failing students. I know there are a lot of them. I understand that. I would like to see the numbers as well, but I'm not as worried about that. I'm as worried about those ones that did completely fail miserably. Is there going to be anything that we can do to help recover that, for them to graduate, for them to make up those courses they did fail? Is there anything, any plan in place, anything that we're going to be able to do to help our students through trying to do, recovery, besides just the regular Edgenuity classes that we have right now? Because that's kind of a struggle even remotely. That's just some of the questions that I had. But other than that, I know that you guys are in a tough spot, and I see you all the time, Dr. Hornak. So I know we've talked about it, but you guys have done a wonderful job with what you guys have. This is new to everybody, and nobody's been in this position before. So I deeply, deeply thank you guys for that.
Thank you. Dr. Hornak, will some of those questions be answered by your meeting later this week?
We are capturing those, and we will see if we can incorporate the questions into our responses later this week, yes, with different stakeholder groups. And by the way, we are recording this, and this will be posted, and I'll see if we can record our other sessions as well, so those can be viewed at a later time. So, yep, we can do that.
Thank you. Ms. Bureau.
Oh, all the hands are gone. Let's give it a second. And here we go. Bree McFall.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I just want to bring up, I had a conversation this week with our lovely transportation department. And we're unique in Holt in that we have several different buildings in different grade levels. And potentially families, depending on ages and size of their family, could have students in 5 different buildings. So I want you to be very thoughtful and intentional as you're planning transportation and what you are offering to families, especially those that could, in theory, have to do a school pickup at, for example, Hope and Wilcox and Midway all at the same time, where transportation may ease some of those concerns where students might be unsupervised or staff will have to supervise students for an extra period of time while they're waiting for parents.
Okay, thank you.
Samantha Lake.
Good evening, board and community. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to also thank you for keeping the health and safety of our students at the forefront. I know that this is a controversial time, unprecedented time, and I praise you for the work that you're doing. Whether you agree with how the plan is coming together or what decisions have been made, I just want to thank you for the effort and the ongoing of putting the safety of the students first. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Trula Bristow.
Hello, hi, my name is Trula Bristow. I am calling just to kind of share with you guys some of my experiences. I have 2 sons here in Holt. One is a 4th grader and one is a 7th grader. And I'm also a school psychologist, and I service schools in Jackson County. So as a school psychologist, I returned to work in August. And if I'm being honest, I was completely terrified and did not want to go back because I was worried I would get sick, or more importantly, get someone else sick or bring it home to my family. However, going back was the best thing we could have done in hindsight. We have the appropriate PPE, cleaning, all sorts of mitigation efforts in place, and we have been very safe. I work in a K-2 building as well as a 6 through 8 building, and I also coach a varsity sport. So I work across most of the buildings in that district, which is just slightly smaller than Holt. And we were in session for 12 weeks, and it was amazing. It was great to be back in person. It was great working with the students. The teachers were happy. It was just awesome. I felt like we were all able to do great things for kids for those 12 weeks. But during that 12 weeks, I came home to a 4th grader who has to struggle to do school independently all day. So both my husband and I are working in person, and to come home every day and then do hours of work with them, not because his teacher isn't great, she's absolutely amazing. It's not that, it's what my student needs. My 4th grade student is in-person instruction. He struggles to maintain his attention because there are so many distractions at home. Neither of us can take off of work to be home with him. So it's him and his older brother. His 13-year-old brother is on it. He is doing his work. He is excelling. He is fine. He would love to return to in-person, but he's not struggling. And I'm very grateful for that. It is very hard for me to go to work every day in a setting where the kids are there all day. They are eating breakfast in their classrooms. They are having lunch in their classrooms. In the secondary setting, they have split up lunches so that it's fewer people, and they've had additional lunches. And it's really gone quite well. It really, really has, to my surprise. And we did have to be shut down back on November 13th and then returned in January. And it was like the first day of school again. Everybody was excited and happy to be at work. And not really scared because we'd already done it and been through it and seen how much better it is for our kids. So I guess what I want you to know, and I want anybody in the community listening to know, is there are schools very near Holt who are making decisions, in my opinion, putting our students first and educating them all day and doing a dynamic job, because it is really hard as a parent to watch kids thrive all day in a great education setting and come home and watch my typical developing at minimum on grade level child struggle. We cried until 5:30 today working on writing, and I had to stop to attend this. And now I'll most likely have to work on the rest of a paragraph with him before he goes to bed. And so I just want everybody to know that there are places doing this, they are making it work, and they're doing what's right for our kids. And I know it's scary for staff to go back. I have gone through it, but it is the right thing to do. And this was well before a vaccine, well before. I'm lucky enough to have my first dose and my second dose next week. I'm very thankful, and I will feel better. But I just want everyone to know that it is possible, and it is amazing, and it's what's right for kids. And I'd really like Holt to consider having a full day for our students because it's what's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Stewart.
Thank you for letting me come on. First, I want to thank you guys all for a thankless job. I wouldn't want your job or have to figure out this to keep us all safe. I have 2 students. I have one that is a sophomore that has miserably failed online learning. He is excited to go back. On the other hand, I have a child that should graduate in 2021, but because of health problems, she will continue to stay online in order to graduate. I'm hoping that we can work something out for all of us and you guys so everybody can be safe. I just I wouldn't want the choice, the decision. They've helped me wonderfully with my daughter who is chronically ill, so she can graduate. My son, being a 10th grader, he can't wait to get back into the classroom because he is also has an IEP and failed every class this semester. We're going to figure out how to fix it one way or the other. He will graduate, and I know it will be with the help of all of you guys. And so I want to thank everybody in the district for a thankless job.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Odette Lavique. Ms. Lavique, you need to unmute. Okay, I guess we'll go on to Doug Wood.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
I can definitely understand from our personal level with the students that are struggling. I went to Holt. I currently work for Holt, and I found out 2 weeks before I graduated from high school that I was dyslexic, and put a little age on me. I was graduated from Holt in 1987. Since then, I went to college and tried to use all the things, different tools to help me overcome my dyslexia, and it was not without struggle. Back when I started college, they used to put my books on cassette tape, and they would have people come in and read it. I'd get my money for books, and I would take them down, and they would have 10 to 15 business days to get them back to me, which put me 2 to 3 weeks behind everybody else in the classes. I understand these students that are struggling. I went back to college when I was 38 and graduated from Davenport with a 3.79 grade point average. And I use technology to overcome my disability. They have screen readers that read the text off from the screen for you. They also have things like easy PDF readers that if you can get your books on media, that can read the books for you. And then they also have the drag and speech to text that helped in ways that I couldn't even tell you, because I was able to just talk like normal, and it would write down my thoughts on to the computer, and then I could go back and use my PDF reader or screen reader to read those back to me so that I can form papers and make them make sense, because I could hear them when they didn't make sense. So I don't know. I just want to offer that out there to parents that have kids that are struggling. Look for technologies to help them overcome them, because they definitely helped me. They changed my life, and made me believe in myself again, because when I graduated with a 1.9 from high school, I knew I could do better. I knew I had it in me. I knew I was smarter than it made me out to be. And after graduating with a 3.79, I could definitely hold my head up high and know that you can use technology to overcome those struggles. And I'm willing to help any way I can. Thank you for your time, and thanks to all the people that are working hard in the board, and all you people that put in these extra hours. I do appreciate it, and I also enjoy working for the district and the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
And Brand.
Good evening. How appropriate that I would follow Mr. Wood, as my son is also dyslexic. And I have been on and spoke to the board many times, and I can't tell you how much of a blessing going online has been. My son has too had all of the technology now given to him in a form in which he needed. This has totally opened his eyes and given him confidence. While grades are not completely in stone this semester, he will end this semester with a 4.0. Going to Wilson, earning college credit, a 4.0 at Wilson as well. This has changed his life. He doesn't want to go back in person. He wants this technology. This is what we've needed all along. And I have spoken to many parents who also have children who have IEPs, who have the same struggles that Isaac had, and their children too are thriving in this environment. So while some students are not thriving, I understand it's very difficult. Trust me, I have been there my child's entire education. I've been there with the struggling kid, and I finally get to see the flip side. And I just can't even describe it. It's so awesome. So I hope that we take everything that we have learned with going online and all of these technology advances that we have done, and we keep forth with them in the years to come. And I'm so happy that we are a one-to-one district now with Chromebooks, because this will change these kids' lives. These kids who have struggled and needed this technology to put the pieces together. Until you have a child who has experienced this, you can't understand. Like I can't even describe it. And to watch my kid all semester carry an A in every class, it's just amazing. And watching him, and if you would have told me his freshman year that he could have held down a job working 15 hours a week, played varsity tennis, and carried a 4.0, I would have told you you were on another planet. Like, that wasn't even in our vision 2 years ago. And it's all because the technology has been brought forth. I've talked to many parents, and it's the same with their kids. They are thriving now. So while we have challenges with kids who were thriving and who are not, we also have these success stories on the kids who were not thriving and who have never seen this success, and they are just triumphing now. And it's so exciting to watch for us, the parents who've never seen their kids glow like this. And now we finally have it. So while you have kids who are struggling, you also have the flip side where you have these kids who this is their thing now, and they've figured out their way in life, and they will be successful, and they know they can do it now. So you have both sides, and not everybody is going to be happy with everything, but I think we also need to celebrate these kids that we've helped so much in their lives as well, finding the path that they needed. So I think the board is doing a great job. I hope that we continue with the technology side going forth, because it can only help struggling students. Thank you.
Thank you.
DB. DB, you need, oh, there you go. Okay, I took their hand down. Gretchen Gibbs.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak with you guys tonight. I guess, I'm listening to everybody's experiences that they're sharing, and, I am not a parent in the community, but I am a teacher and I am a coach. I have friends who are parents. I have friends who are teachers. I have friends who are admin. And I just really want to encourage everybody. Something that's become very clear to me, even for myself, is that there's so much going on. There's so many moving pieces for all of this, for everybody. I'd really just like to encourage all of us to think about the fact that we don't always know everything that's going on. I'm seeing some posts on Facebook about, oh, I didn't realize that this was the situation, or I'm really pleased to hear that, these are things that are being thought of. One of the board members earlier mentioned, like, being in the on the walkthrough, like, oh, it became very apparent at that point in time that work had been going into preparing our buildings. And I mean, even just for myself, thinking about, I heard Ms. Cosgrove talk about, busing, like a busing situation, that I was like, oh my gosh, I never even realized, all of the parts and all of the things that, we just don't even know about, that people are making decisions on. And, this is a conversation, like I said, I'm a coach. We had this conversation with our team today, who, for I don't even know how many weeks we've been pushed back from competing and pushed back from practicing. And, we have to try to kind of work through this with them. And it's not always apparent, but we tell them, we put our trust in the people who are making these decisions, because they are the experts, and, they have our best interest at the forefront. And so I guess, teachers aren't here to, make students' lives miserable or anything. Like, we're here because we love working with kids. Same thing with coaches. And I'm sure nobody would be in any position that they're here, that they are in, if they didn't care about students, they didn't care about families. So I'm just would like to encourage us all to, kind of keep that in mind as we continue having these conversations. Just, there's so much that we don't know, and to maybe, like, put a little trust back in the people who are making decisions, knowing that, that is what we're all here for. That's our whole purpose being here. So thank you guys so much for everything. And I mean that too. I just, as a small side note, I mean that too, as far as listening to parents and trusting that their experiences are valid and are real. And the things that they are struggling with are things that need to be addressed. So I don't want parents to think that I'm only talking about, teachers and admin, but just to all trust each other, and to really keep our minds open and know that we're working on a common goal. So thank you guys for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs.
Heather Peterson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather, and Peterson. I teach at the high school, and I have kids. We live in Dimondale, so we're one of those families that's the Eaton County family, but goes to Holt Public. And I've got 2 high schoolers and a graduate, and I teach biology. I've been in Holt for many years. I taught some of you out there in the audience, of course. And I appreciate all the work that's been going on. I have actually been lucky enough to be in some of the meetings that have been involved with planning this, and I still, of course, don't have a full picture. My biggest concern as a parent and a teacher is, how am I going to choose, right? How are my kids going to choose? How am I going to choose? So 2 months ago, I said, for sure, those kids are going back the second they get a chance to. If I'm going back, they're going back, right? And then a couple months into this, my kids are getting their feet under them, and I'm thinking, okay, this online learning's going okay. And then I ask one of my high schoolers, they want to go back right away because they want to be able to ask questions in person. They want to get to know their teachers. Then I have another one who's like,
I don't want to have to roll out of bed before 8:55, or I don't want to have to see people if I don't want to. And so it's very complicated and we're all dealing with this, right? I'm really worried. How do I tell my students what to expect? How do I tell my families what to expect? How do I help my own children decide? And nobody knows the answers. So I keep asking everyone, I don't even know, like I can barely wrap my head around what this will be like to teach both. So I just want everyone to know that I know people want choices, and I can hear families that want to go back face to face are probably like, well, we're not trying to take away your choice to be remote. Well, guess what? Remote is going to be completely different. I don't know how we even begin to decide how it's going to look. It's going to look very different for my classroom. Maybe there's some teachers that have been doing it differently, but I've been teaching live. I've been able to do activities with my students during class, taking notes, monitoring the chat, doing breakout groups. And yes, there are schools doing this. Yes, we can do this, but it's going to be different. So I don't even know how to tell my students what to choose. I want to be in person. I want to do labs. We're not going to be able to do full labs, but will I be able to have one kid at a table with some disposable materials and get to do some hands-on and get to know a kid face to face? Maybe. So I want to encourage everyone to reach out, ask questions, see what their teachers can say, but understand we don't know what it's going to be like 100%. No one knows. I don't even know what I can say to my students and my families. And just know, like Gretchen said and everyone else, we really do care. We care about these kids. We are bending over backwards to try and help them. We are worried about them. We understand. We want to be face to face too, but then we balance it with all these other issues. So I appreciate our districts taking so much time to think through it, look at the metrics, use the science. But as a parent and a teacher, I see both sides of it. And if we've got a survey to fill out next week, I don't even know how families are going to wrap their head around it, but I hope we get some more information so that we can make decisions. But I do appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
DB. Well, they're unmuted again, but I don't know if they're wanting to speak or not. I guess we'll move on to Tim Hen. Mr. Hen, you need to unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've heard with interest everything that has been said. Let's face it, we're in a tough time right now, okay? I mean, it's just the whole country is, we don't seem to be able to think as one or come together as one. But when it comes to school and these children, sometimes I think to myself that we know we have this virus out there that is certainly hurting our population. And I guess that if you're a parent and you're worried about your child, I mean, but when you look at them in the morning and you're going to send them to school, maybe ask yourself, when they come home, are they going to be okay? Are they going to be somehow exposed? Whatever. That we have this situation where we're trying to put them back in school. We're not always sure that we know the right way to put them back in school. And if we send them, will I get them back the same way I sent them? And I think that's a big thing for parents to start thinking about right now. I know that there's stuff that is going on, and parents want their children back in school. I get it. Most teachers, most parents, most staff would probably rather be back in school with their students. But what we want isn't always the right thing that we can get at that moment in time. And I think this is very, very serious, that we got to think about what's going to happen if we try and push through, and what happens if it doesn't work. Who's going to explain why the kid got sick? Who's going to handle this stuff? That's it. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Henn.
Sarah Arthur.
Hi, everyone. This is Sarah Arthur. I'm a parent volunteer with the Holt Equity and Access team and the parent of 2 students, elementary students at Wilcox. And I just want to maybe just a word of encouragement to the board and to the staff and faculty, but also to parents as they're listening. 2 years ago, I went through cancer treatment. My youngest son was age 4 and my oldest son was age 7 when I was diagnosed during a year that was already very difficult for us. And we had to change up a lot about what was going on in our household. The boys had to get off the school bus and change their clothes. They couldn't come in and hug me while I was going through chemo because I would be at risk. And I just want to encourage you all that even though that was the crummiest year, you think 2020 and 2021 are bad. Just let me tell you about 2018 sometime. But even though that was really difficult, not being able to hug my kids, not being able to have our regular routine, things changed at home so much that it felt like we were losing an entire year of their life. The things that they learned and experienced that we cannot quantify. They learned resilience, they learned compassion, they learned that adults can go through a hard time and families can still love each other. They learned that it's going to be hard a lot, but people reached out to us. I just don't want us to lose sight of the unquantifiable things that children learn when we are all in this together. And while, you are pouring your hearts out into their education, and of course I'm volunteering tons of hours myself for the district. This is going to sound horrible after hours of this meeting, but school isn't everything. And the whole burden of their well-being does not fall on just you all. You are part of a whole ecology of their flourishing. And so just to take the pressure valve off a little bit and say there is so much more that they're learning right now than what's happening in or out of the classroom. And that your love and care and compassion shines through so much on these board meetings that my children actually sit next to me to watch your faces on the screen, like my son is right now, because he knows you care. And he, at the end of the year, even if we're not making whatever marks we're supposed to be making, they have learned something important about what their community means to them and what they mean to their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arthur.
Mr. Perry, we have 2 more hands up. They've each spoken already tonight. I don't know what is our protocol for this.
They have both spoken.
They spoke earlier. Now I have, yeah, and now DB has put their hand up again as well.
Let's have this, but let's keep it brief so that we stay within that 5 minutes.
We'll start with DB since they have not been able to speak yet.
Hello, this is DB. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Good work.
Oh my goodness, that took a while. I'm on my phone and I wasn't sure how to do that. Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, thank you for all that you have done. There's obviously been a lot of work put into this by everyone. Starting out with, I would like to suggest that we all try to call physical distancing and not social distancing. I find that to be a much more happier term. Social distancing sounds like the plague. You can't be by anybody. You can't talk to anybody. You can't do anything. But we can. We still can talk to people. Where physical distancing, you're just physical distancing, but you can still socialize while you're physical distancing. So that is just one suggestion. Question I had, why are we deep cleaning on Wednesdays? I do not see that that is something in the CDC guidelines to deep clean at this time. Now, in the beginning, when COVID started out, I understand that that was something, but I cannot find it in the CDC guidelines. They just talk about cleaning daily. And as far as I understand with businesses, the only time they would do a deep clean is if there was a positive case and they would deep clean the areas that they felt were necessary. I don't know if that's a question that can be answered now. If not, I'll continue.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. Everyone has always referenced the numbers. But the problem is no one really knows what these numbers mean. The state of Michigan references numbers. Nationally, people reference numbers. But the key is, are these positive results? Are they hospitalized patients? Are they sick patients that went to see a doctor? Are they actual deaths? That is the key when you're looking at numbers. So when anybody is looking at the numbers as Holt is in the metrics, you have to understand what numbers actually mean. So I appreciate you looking at the details into that. Specifically, is it adults or is it kids? It needs to be reflected in what people refer to as numbers. Again, thank you for all you have done. It sounds like you've done a lot, but I hear so much being said about everyone is here for our kids, and I appreciate that. But honestly, I don't fully see that in everything. My son is in high school. Some classes are 10 minutes long. Then he goes back to sleep. And then he has to wake up for the next class. I heard somebody speak earlier that a teacher went on a bicycle ride. I'm so confused at that. Regarding the data and the metrics, the data is out there. Kids are not at high risk. That data has been out there for months. I honestly missed that Holt declared remote all this year. I had no clue of that. And I can tell you, there were many, many families who would have considered transferring their kids out of Holt this year had they known that. And honestly, are still considering transferring their kids out of Holt next year. I'm not saying that to be mean or a threat or anything, but the Holt community needs, as far as the school and community, needs to make a plan here so that people can decide what they're going to do. I don't understand why other schools have been face-to-face all over the country. I know my brother's kids in Florida have been. And then Why are we reinventing the wheel? Why are we not talking to all these schools? I heard Brighton mentioned. Why don't we just go with their plan and go from there? The metrics are unattainable. I think they should be thrown out. You will never have a perfect plan. You can never be fully ready. I do appreciate that some kids like virtual, and there are online options for them, and that's great. Do both virtual and face-to-face. I'm a nurse. I have always thought it would be fabulous when kids are sick at home or they're in the hospital, but they're not sick enough that they can't sit and watch in on a class. So for me, the virtual part of that, for when somebody is sick, fabulous. I think the whole key here is fear of the unknown. We just need to start and then adjust as needed. There is no way it's going to be perfect, but make a plan, start, and adjust. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Amy Stewart.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I just wondered, I forgot if we can get some numbers of the failure rate or the pass rate, because we've heard success stories and failure stories, or failure, or I shouldn't say it, failure. I just wondered how we could get some data of how this semester, since we just finished it, or trimester is going, if we can get those numbers. That was all I was wondering.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Wood.
I just want to say something real short to all the high schoolers. This is actually going to help you in the long run, because when I went back to college, I took half of my classes virtually and half in person. And at first I struggled with it, and every semester it seemed like I struggled with it. But as I threw my heart into it, it got better and better. And I've had my failures. I failed English, and my parents made me ride my bike from Diamondale to Holt to go to my class. So that's 7.5 miles one way just to go to English class. And I got an A in the class. So I encourage all the parents at home that they have struggling students. There is ways for those students to overcome that, because I've done it and I'm willing to help. I was approved to be a substitute teacher in the district. Didn't go that way. I worked in the cafeteria, I worked in maintenance, I drove school buses, and I'm willing to help wherever I can to help students that are struggling. And that's all I have. Thanks to all the parents for hanging in there and working hard. I know going to work and coming home is like work again, but your students are worth it. I know they are. I've met probably every one of them. So thank you. And thanks to the board and everybody else that puts in all the hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Tara Farhat.
I just want to point out that I had reached out to most of the members of the school board and a lot of administration after last meeting, and I want to actually thank all of them that did respond and have conversations. It was really appreciated, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware that I did really appreciate the fact that there was some transparency in those conversations. As a parent at the last school board meeting, I felt like that was what we were missing out on a lot, was the transparency that was happening and not knowing a plan. And I also want to just thank everybody for, first of all, calling this board meeting out of, I don't know if it was an emergency board meeting or what we can consider it, but it was something that us as a whole community needed. And I actually think that we've learned a lot tonight. We have a lot to sit on and stew on. But one thing that's clear, and I appreciate Dr. Hornak and everyone who did state this multiple times, every student does learn differently, and having both of these options is really, truly something that we do need to consider for everybody. I'm not asking for, in my request, I'm not asking for teachers to come and, be unsafe. I am asking that they get vaccinated and return to school. And I just want to be clear that I'm not asking, I don't want anyone to feel unsafe at school or any of those things, but I do think that if we do research some of the data on just safety protocols, what that means, different things we could do inside the classroom. I was talking to somebody in the community and, putting up or doing camera work where maybe Mrs. Peterson could do a lab and have it be on video. The kids can access it at their desks or watch her do it, and the same kids can do it at home. I do think that we live in a world of technology, and we can think outside of the box. And I just think that this is a way to take a baby step and think innovatively. I appreciate the fact that we are doing that now, and we didn't know before because nobody was talking. So thank you for that. And just again, we have 2 plans in place. If you don't feel safe, you can choose a virtual plan. And if you feel like your kids are the kids that do need the live instructions and are falling behind, that plan is being put into place. And I just thank you that we are having that opportunity for both sides of this coin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farad.
Okay, I think that was it.
Okay, we will close public comment and we will move to our next agenda item, closed session. But before I entertain a motion for that, if you are in the public out there, please note that when we return from closed session, we do not plan to conduct any more business, and we'll just adjourn at that point in time. I just don't want you to hang on there and then we come back in 40 minutes and close the meeting, and there's nothing there. So feel free, if you would like, though, you can stick on. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268, Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act to discuss bargaining unit contract negotiations.
Second. Have a first and a second. Any discussion? If not, Ms. Bureau, if you could do a roll call vote.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Robel,
Yes.
Mr. Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Halkern,
Yes.
Ms. Dalton,
Yes.
Mrs. Bureau, yes, and Mr. Perry.
Yes. Okay, board members, you did get an email from Christine, so we'll need to go on to a separate Zoom site.
Thanks to the public who contributed today. It was good to hear your feedback. Looks like some people stuck with us.
Just need Julie, right? Kevin, do we have anybody from the public?
There's 22 people in the public right now. I don't know if they're paying attention or not, but they're out there.
Christine, can you please send Julie the link? Thank you.
I'm in the process of doing that now.
Oh,
She should be popping in anytime I sent the link.
there's Christine again.
Dr.
You got-
Leonard's sighing a big sigh of relief. I was going to have him do the roll call.
We've got 2 Dr. Leonards and 2 Christine Lopez's right now on the screen, but it'll have to do.
Oh yeah, that's because I shared my link. Okay.
Here.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have it first and second. Ms. Bureau, if you could do a roll call.
She's still connecting to audio. Oh, there you are.
Mostly.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. We need a roll call to close. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. Before you're getting me seasick with your computer there.
Oh, shoot, sorry. No, it's on my phone. That's part of the problem. Okay. Mr. Leonard.
Aye.
Robel?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Bureau? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Dalton?
Yes.
And Mr. Holmgren?
Yes.
All right. With that, we stay adjourned. Thank you all for a long, very helpful board meeting.
Be kind to everyone.